Okay, welcome. I said I'd be back at 11, and here I am. There's so much I want to talk about, and I really want to push as many people as I can to YouTube because there's things that I have to talk about without any censorship because it's going to help you on your journey. But as I said, I would come back to start talking about the Cathars. And again, my journey for the last 3-4 months, it's been my entire life, but in this particular journey, I've been trying to figure out I've been trying to find our history as a people. And our history got rerouted because of the Abrahamic religions, the 3 top religions. And they really fucked us. It fucked us mentally. But also, most importantly, it took a great avatar, a great teacher, and it used what it could to subjugate the masses. And then it took, and then it diluted a lot. When I first came across the Gnostic Gospel by Elaine Pagel, PBS had done a show on her in 1998. That was the first time I found out that Mary Magdalene was not a whore. Okay? And I can't tell you as a young woman how much that meant to me. And I don't know why, because I am not baptized. I've never been to, I don't go to sermons. I've gone to a couple sermons once or twice. Frankly, it's not my thing. I mean, it's not. I've gone to Self-Realization Center on a sermon there, and I really was inspired. I went twice, inspired as fuck. I've gone to talks for the Krishna temple, here and there inspired, but nothing. Really the most inspired I've ever been is me and God. I'm just going to say it. However, I do realize that I had, like you, past lives where I was locked and loaded into these Abrahamic religions, to Buddhist religions, to Hindu religions, to Muslim religions. But in this case, as I promised, that I would come back to talk to you and to read from the Cathars, Their History and Myths Revealed by Sean Martin, Heresy and Orthodoxy, and I'm fascinated. Now, why am I so fascinated? Well, because I'm trying to excavate and deconstruct how the fuck they took the divine sacred couple as an archetype for all of us, because we've all suffered. If you've been in a twin flame journey, you know what I'm talking about. And they were the master couple. They were twin rays, Mary Magdalene and Yeshua. How could they take these 2 perfect human beings in a world fraught with danger, greed, jealousy, ego? It's disgusting. But most importantly, going back to Adam and Eve and women, and again, I'm being very much pro-feminine consciousness, right? And it's to your benefit, my brothers. It's to your benefit. Because hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. And we women we are scorned. We are angry, many of us, and we've been angry from our very beginnings, from, say, being molested, from being ogled, catcalled, fondled, violated, and we never consented. But then we have been turned into monsters, pariahs, from an Abrahamic system. So of course I want to know why. And of course I want to know what came before us. And of course I want to honor the divine masculines in in many of the Knights Templars who actually built the Cathedral of Chartres, 50 kilometers from Paris. It's called the Cathedral of Chartres. It's known as the Black Madonna or the Blue Madonna, and how they came back from the Crusades to build this cathedral honoring the Blue Madonna, Black Madonna. And they have labyrinths, and there's a lot of blue. The reason why they see the Blue Madonna is because there's a lot of blue glass used in the stained glass windows. And it's an extraordinary cathedral. And why would they build it to honor the feminine sex if we were fucking bastardized? Why? Why would these grown-ass Some of them were celibate, some of them not. They were like hippie fucking monks having a mistress, or marrying these women, having children, having a whole other life. Like they had two lives. One is a warrior monk, and you know, and they had their own life. Some of them, for real. Okay, this is known. But why would they honor a feminine in the most misogynistic timeline? Why? And then this year I came across the Cathars, and I was shook. And to say that I'm upset, and to say that I, recognized in a very somatic, visceral way this story is an understatement. And if you can't share the live, and if you miss any parts of it, I'll have it on YouTube. So I'm going to read to you a lot of this today, because you know sometimes I read a lot, and today I'm going to read. So it's story time. So tuck in, cuddle up, and let's begin. Introduction. Cathars, if you saw these art, you'd be like, holy shit. There's a drawing, I'm going to say this. There's a drawing, not a drawing, a picture, an aerial picture of a Cathar village in Languedoc. And it's a circle like Shoku Rei. If you guys know Reiki, you know exactly what I just said. It looks like Shoku Rei. And it says, was built in a concentric circles as a defensive measure. It's a circle that keeps going within. It's like the flower of life. It's like, and again, these people were born, these people were alive in around the 12th century. So let me start. I'm not going to interrupt again. Catharism was the most popular heresy of the Middle Ages. Indeed, such was its success that the church and its apologists referred to it as the Great Heresy. At the end of the 12th century, Catharism was at its zenith. Cathars could be found from Aragon to Flanders, from Naples to the Languedoc. Its equivalent of priest, the perfect, lived lives so conspicuously virtuous that even their enemies had to admit that they were indeed holy and good people. The Cathars found widespread support in all areas of society, from kings and counts to carpenters and weavers. Women, never welcomed by the church, became Cathars, knowing they could earn respect and actively participate in the faith. This mixture of women, virtue, and apocalyptic poverty, to say nothing of the Cathars church's popularity, was not appreciated by Rome. Likewise, Rome was not appreciated by the Cathars, who believed that the church had, in its pursuit of worldly power, betrayed Christ's message. When I first read this, I started sobbing. Because women were honored as equals in the 12th century by a sect that was slaughtered. Let me continue. In some areas of the south of France, Cathars were more numerous than Catholics. It was hardly surprising then that the Catholics moved against the Cathars. What shocked contemporaries was not that the Pope ordered a crusade to put down the heresy, but that the Crusaders committed atrocities of the magnitude of Béziers. In the Languedoc, these crimes had never really been forgotten to this day. Strangely, considering its popularity, the exact origin of Catharism are unknown. But it emerged at a time when the church in Europe as a whole was undergoing enormous changes prior to the emergence of the so-called Renaissance. Although it is now difficult to imagine the scale of an atrocity such as Béziers, we can go some way to understanding the mindset of the Cathars, persecutors, by studying the history of the church and how heresy emerged from it. Moreover, a study of the heresy of the dualistic heresy, the belief that the devil is as powerful as God, to which Cathars adhered, helps to put the battle between Catholics and Cathars into historical perceptions. Let me explain. This is big, because from just this page, came the understanding that if the Cathars saw women as equals, if the Cathars allowed women to actively participate in Christ's consciousness, then they were the caretakers of the Holy Grail. They were the caretakers of the secret marriage, the bridegroom and his bridemaid of Yeshua and Mary Magdalene. And at that point, I realized, okay, this is, they had the knowledge. They kept it safe. And it was widely distributed, this information, okay? All right. Here it says on the side, there's a bust of Plato. Plato's idea, there is an immortal soul and a mortal body lies at the core of dualistic beliefs, okay? Dualism. Dualism existed before Christianity and may be older than recorded history. The English Orientalist Thomas Hyde coined the term in the 1700s to describe any religious system that held that God and the devil are two opposing co-eternal principles. The meaning of the term expanded to include any system that revolved around a central binary pairing, such as the mind-body split in the philosophy of Descartes, or the immortal soul-mortal body in that of Plato. Dualist strand exists in one form or another in all major religions, whether monotheistic, acknowledging one God, such as Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. Didn't I say? So that's what they mean by the Abrahamic religion. It is Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. Okay? Polytheistic acknowledge many gods, such as Shintoism, and some form of Wicca, or the pantheon of classical Greek or Egyptian. I'll add that. It wasn't in there. Or monastic, acknowledging that everything, the divine, matter, and humanity is of one and the same essential substance, such as certain schools of Hinduism, Buddhism, and Taoism. For example, fundamentalistic Christianity has a pronounced dualistic slant in that it sees things in the world, rock, music, drugs, New Age philosophies, Hollywood blockbusters are the work of the devil. Likewise, extremist Islamic groups see non-Muslims as either essentially asleep to the truth or actively engaged in undermining the religion of the Prophet. In both, which is a lie. By the way, he's explaining, which is a lie, because the Muslim religion is actively in honoring Yeshua and his mother. Okay, this is known. So this belief system that we have today is a lot of propaganda bullshit. In both cases, an us and a them mentality prevails from which there is only one escape route. Belief in Jesus and Muhammad respectively. It's either you believe this one or that one, or you're gone. Get the fuck out. You're not going to survive. Something Buddhism has never done, by the way. Despite these various levels of dualism in the different faiths of the world, religious dualism stands apart in positing the notion of the two opposing principles of good and evil. Within the dualistic tradition itself, there are generally held to be two schools of thought: absolute or radical dualism, and mitigating or moderate dualism. Ugo Bianca, the Italian historian of religion, identified three distinctive features of dualism. Absolute dualism regards the opposing principles of good and evil as co-eternal and equal. Mitigating dualism, on the other hand, regards the evil principle as a secondary lesser power to the good principle. Now, I believe that's true. That evil is never as strong as good. That love is more powerful than hate. I totally believe that. Absolute dualism sees the two principles as locked in combat for all eternity. Many schools regard time as a cyclical to these dualistic traditions, therefore tend to believe in reincarnation. Mitigated dualism sees historical time as being finite. At the end of time, the evil principle will be defeated by good. And this is absolutely not correct. There is no end of time. There is just transformation. There is a morphing of realities. And what we believe in, right, in the dualistic concepts that we've all been raised on, let's be honest, is that we've been taught that the polarity of good and evil, right, is part of the construct. We've been brainwashed to believe that's true, and it's not. There's a morphing going on, and the evil that we haven't seen ever to the likes in recorded history. Let's be honest, because no one has flip phones anymore. Okay, we all have cameras. We're seeing footages that no one has. Listen, 1,200 years ago, they would hear stories of what you've been seeing for the last 3, 4, 5, 10 years on your phone. Okay, that's never happened. People told stories when the Crusaders came back to speak of the stories of the horrors they'd committed or they'd seen committed or both. There were stories. No one had footage like we have today. So this concept that it always be is not, because to see this violence and for us to say we do not consent is a change, meaning 1,200 years ago, people did not feel like they had a choice. Very similarly to World War I and World War II. They felt like this was just how the world was run. Something is happening. We're morphing. We're changing. We're becoming so transcendental that we know something in us is telling us this is not how it is. And even if it's been like that for 10,000 years, we do not consent to this continuing for another 10,000 years. There's a transmission going on collectively, and the energy and the messages of dualism is shifting for the better. And I know this because I'm seeing it. I'm seeing people I thought I would never follow, never listen to, fucking come to an awakening. Because what awakens is humanity, not your politics, not who you voted for, not any of that shit. Not even the music you listen to. It's humanity. Does this fit into the kind of world and reality I want to live in? No. Okay, well, I'm with you. It isn't about party systems anymore. Okay, let's continue. Absolute dualism sees the material world as intrinsically evil, but mitigated dualism regards creation as essentially good. There's some massive confusion in how people thought. I'm not joking. The first Christians. Let's go right into the first Christians and let's begin. Early Christianity was made up of numerous groups, each with its own belief and practices. When the Cathars claimed that they were descendants from the first Christians, they probably had in mind the sort of simple Christianity practiced by the apostles. They were certainly implying that they were part of the tradition of true Christianity that thrived before the tenets of mainstream Christianity were fixed at the Council of Nicaea. The council, which was convened by the newly converted Emperor Constantine in 325 AD, not only defined what constituted Orthodox Christianity, but in doing so also defined what was heresy. Beliefs of many of the early Christian groups ended up in the latter category. To understand how this came about, it is necessary to consider the fractious political situations of the nascent church in the first AD. Did you understand from the very beginning and inception of Christianity as you know it, orthodoxy? It was politicized, damn near immediately. Let's continue. During and immediately after Yeshua's ministry, his followers were a minority persecuted by both the Romans and the Pharisees alike. There is a continuing controversy as to who was Yeshua's successor in the movement. Peter is traditionally seen as the rock upon which the church was built and from which the Roman Catholic Church claims descendants. Holding Peter as the first pope, however, it has also been argued that it was Yeshua's brother, James, known as James the Lesser, who was the head of the first post-crucifixion Christian community in Jerusalem. It is thought that James' followers clashed with Paul, Christianity's most fervent missionary. The disagreement becomes all the more significant when one considered that Paul's ideas played a large part, if not the largest, in forming the theology on which the Christian faith is based. Yet he remains a controversial figure. He hardly ever quotes Yeshua's words, and his letters, which form the largest part of the New Testament, are often addressed to other Christian communities clarifying points of doctrines or urging them not to stray from the true path. Had early Christianity been a unified movement, there would have been no need for such letters. It would not be going too far to say, as one commentator has done, that Paul, not Jesus, was the founder of Christianity. That's insane. Therein lies the origin of Christian heresy. Paul is in effect the first Christian heretic, and his teachings, which became the foundation of later Christianity, are a flagrant deviation from the original, in quotation marks, or pure, in quotation marks, form. He is the first corrupter of the doctrines of Yeshua. But he would not be the last. There is a world of difference between the simple but profound sermon on the Mount preached by Yeshua and the doctrine of Christ crucified preached by Paul. Gnostic belief spread. The Jewish revolt of AD 66 AD destroyed the building church of James in Jerusalem, while the Christianity of Paul, who was probably dead or dying in a cell in Rome at the time, would continue to grow. However, Pauline Christianity faced further challenges from the various unorthodox groups that sprang up in the 3 centuries before the Council of Nicaea sat. A number of groups stressed the importance of gnosis, or direct experiential knowledge of the divine, and for that reason they are generally known as Gnostics. Yeah, and that's what Yeshua was all about. You were responsible for your self-realized self. You were responsible for connecting with God or the universe, however you want to call it. You were responsible. Not him. Not anyone. You would talk to people, right, who wanted to understand, well, how do I get out of this incarnation bullshit? So people like Yeshua and Mary Magdalene as his equal partner would talk about it, together, apart, whatever. And you had to make your own decisions. You had to be your own savior. There is a bewildering number of Gnostic schools of thought, each with their own often complicated cosmology, but many of them shared the view that the world was created by an evil demiurge who was often identified as the God of the Old Testament. Holy shit. Did you hear that? I'm going to repeat it because that is massive. This is before the church was connected and created by Constantinople, right? By Constantine and his bishops. Listen to this line because it's big. Many of them shared the view that the world was created by an evil demiurge, which was often identified as the God of the Old Testament. If you read the Old Testament, which again, I'm not religious at all. I don't. I just want the truth. You go, who the fuck is this asking people to do this? Why is he angry? Why is he jealous? Why is he vengeful? What the fuck is this? What is this shit? Right? Okay. Somebody asked me, it's the Cathars, their history and myths revealed by Sean Martin. This is massive, ladies and gentlemen. This is massive, sisters and brothers. The demiurge. Okay, let me continue because this is, it gets... Thus, they are mitigated or moderate dualists. Perhaps the most important Gnostic school was that founded by Marcion in the middle of the 6th century. Marcion proposed the existence of 2 gods, the true God and the false God, the creator of the material world and the God of the Old Testament. Holy shit. I'm getting chills. I'm reading this with you. I've never read this past this point. Marcionists rejected the world and were rigorous ascetics. The emergent Roman Church branded Marcion a heretic and condemned his teachings. We've been on a cycle of reincarnation, trying to let other people know this God of the Old Testament, yeah, that's Anunnaki bullshit. Demiurge. That's not God that created us. What the fuck is this in the Old Testament? Do you understand? That's what they were asking. And many of us, if you're interested in this, what the fuck is this in the Old Testament? Do you understand? That's what they were asking. And many of us, if you're interested in this, you were probably there. You were probably a Cathar. I've been saying this for the last 3 days. You were either a Cathar or a Knights Templar, or you heard about this while these people were living, and you wanted this knowledge. Like, who is this? Like, this is why, this goes back, let's back up. And this is why the Roman Catholic Church did not want the Bible to be translated into the man's common language. Okay? Because once you read it, you're like, what the fuck is this dude? Who is this supposed God? The fear of God and God will strike you dead. All kinds of weird ass shit. Who is this? And then you go right into the New Testament. You're going, turn the other cheek. Asking you shall receive. Love your brother and your sister. I mean, it's like a whole different fucking consciousness. Holy shit. Let me continue. Okay, so the emerging Roman Catholic Church branded Marcion a heretic and condemned his teachings. The belief in two gods and the asceticism of the Marcionites would later reappear in Catharism, together with another Gnostic idea that Christ was an apparition rather than a flesh and blood human being. Many Gnostics saw Yeshua's passions and resurrections as essentially ghostly without any human suffering involved. This idea, which became known as the Docetism, was also pronounced heretical. They're trying to figure this shit out. Is he real? Is he an archetype? Did Yeshua really walk the world? Did he really, was he a ghost? Was he from the other side of the realms? You have to understand, there's no satellite, there's no bullshit. You can see the stars. Your third eye is probably mostly widely open if you are a spiritualist of that level. Do you understand? This is like 2,000 years ago. This is like probably 1,800 years ago. You're sitting around going, yeah, I'm surrounded by just purity and no one's controlling me. And I'm trying to figure out the nature of my incarnation. Like, why am I here? Who was this dude called Jesus? There's no hormones in your milk. There's no bullshit. You pick apples. There's no barcodes. So the third eye, if they're wearing shoes, they're wearing leather sandals. That means you're constantly getting connection with the power of the earth. The electromagnetic current is going through from your feet all the way up your body. Do you understand? Your chakras are spinning. But you don't have access to all these books. You don't have access to these metaphysical occultists. There's no guys coming from India or Egypt or Tibet. Not yet. It's extraordinary. This incredible awakening. And they're asking questions. The belief in two gods and the asceticism of the Marcions would later appear in Catharism together with another Gnostic idea that Jesus is he for real? Catharism differed from many Gnostic schools of thought in saying that the way to salvation was possibly only through the ministrations of the Cathar priesthood, the perfect, rather than by direct Gnostic on the part of the believer. It is ironic that in doing so, Catharism mirrored Catholicism. In other words, they were saying, for you to be pure and to stop the reincarnation, in this case, right, I'm going to say it that way, you had to be a priest. You had to be pure. You had to be celibate, which did mirror, Catholicism, which claimed that the only way to salvation was through the intervention of its priests. This is where suddenly what should have been your own self-realization, which is what Yeshua taught, now you're sitting in front of a priest, a minister, whatever, telling you what to think, how to see God. In fact, he's your translator, right? All right, the Manichaeans. The main heresy the church had to deal with after Nicaea was Manichaeans, a secretist faith incorporated ideas from Zoroastrianism, Christianity, and Buddhism, which was founded by the Persian prophet Mani, 216 AD to 275 AD. There were two distinct classes of Manichaeism, the elect and the listeners. The elect were the faith priesthood and practiced strict asceticism, abstaining from meat, wine, blasphemy, and sex. The listeners, the rank and file believers, were also expected to observe certain rules, including contributing to the upkeep of the elect. While they were allowed to own property and marry, they were forbidden to have children. Mani's system was highly complicated, but essentially it was radically dualistic. It denied the validity of baptism, held that Christ did not suffer on the cross, rejected the idea of the body as the irredeemable, and maintained that the evil principle is equal to the good. To the church, Manichaeism was the deadliest of heresies, even worse than Marcionism. However, it enjoyed widespread popularity, and Saint Augustine of Hippo was a listener in the sect for 9 years. He later denounced Manichaeism in the book De Manichaeas and De Heresibus, which were to become the Church's standard reference books on all matter heretical. The Manichaeans, increasingly persecuted, fled Europe for Asia. Okay, cool. So they're off to Asia. And now there's another sect, the Bogomils. The Bogomils, who emerged in the 10th century, were the Cathars' immediate forerunners. Their faith was originally seen as a mixture of Manichaeism and Polytheism, the latter being practiced by a dualistic sect that had been active in Bulgaria since the 9th century. A Bulgarian priest known as Cosmos denounced the Bulgarians in his sermon against the heretics, which was written in about 970 AD. He believed that the sect was founded by a priest named Bogomil and that its followers rejected the Old Testament and church sacrament. The only prayers they used was the Lord's Prayer. Now, if you've ever read the Lord's Prayer or ever heard the Lord's Prayer in Aramaic, it will shake your chakras. Shake him. Hey, Beth, it's good to see you. The Bogomils did not venerate icons or relics, while the cross was denounced as the instrument of Christ's torture. Well, yeah, sometimes I wonder about that. Like, why would you wear that around your neck? Anybody? Anyway, no comments. I'll just continue because I can't. The church itself was seen as being in league with the devil, whom the Bogomils regarded as the creator of the visible world as a Christ's brother. Their priests were strict ascetics who abstained from meat. Did you hear that? Meat, wine, and marriage. Well, meat comes up again and again, if you notice. The Bogomils were at least initially moderate dualists who regarded the devil as a fallen angel inferior to God. They were well acquainted with the scriptures, but interpreted them in unorthodox ways, such as identifying the prodigal son with Satan. The Bogomil attitude to the crucifixion was that it was docetic, that is, they regarded it as an apparition, one in which Christ did not really suffer. Now that's interesting. And the question is, why would they, right? And just before I continue reading, you realize, right? I want to make sure you guys, once they fucking slaughtered the entire Cathars, all of these writings, all of these musings, all of this studying, all of these philosophies were burnt, destroyed. Okay, let me continue though, because it's interesting. The Bogomils had a hierarchy similar to that of the Manichaeans, in which they were the perfect and the believers. However, the Bogomils also had listeners who were below the believers, according to the monk Euthymius of Constantinople, who was writing in about 1050. A Bogomil listener became a believer by way of baptism ceremony that included placing the gospel on the initiate's head. The baptism itself was done not with water, but by the laying of hands. A believer could become a perfect only through a course of study, a process that took 2 years or more to complete. The ceremony, do you know that that's like initiation in India? I don't know if you guys know that, but when you're initiated and they give you your new name in India, your Sanskrit name, it is a process of studying. You have to know. You can't just, oh yeah, I'll baptize you, you're good. No, you have to study this shit. And then you're tested. You're tested verbally. It's an oral exam in a way. And they want to know, do you know this? And at that point, you're initiated. In this case, it looks like baptized, okay? The Bogomils regarded themselves as being heirs to true apocalyptic Christianity, modeling himself on Christ and his apostle. A Bogomil leader had 12 disciples and lived a life of simplicity and poverty. In reaction to what the Bogomils saw as the irredeemable corruption and false teaching of the church, what worried Euthymius most was that the Bogomils seemed to have created a fully developed counterchurch, one whose missionaries were active in spreading the word of the heretical faith. They had reached Sicily by around 1080, and from there began to make inroads into Western Europe. The great heresy, the biggest threat the medieval church would ever face, had begun. The emergence of the Cathars. Now we're going to go into the Cathars. And after its first recorded appearance in Germany in 1134, the Cathars movement spread rapidly. It quickly became established in northern Italy and the Languedoc region of southwest France. Let me begin. Introduction. Heresy seems to have died down the second half of the 11th century. It was possibly related to a program of church reform initiated by Pope Leo IX. He was around 1049 to 1054 AD, and continued by Gregory VII, 1073 to 1085 AD. Gregory's papacy was eventful. His most far-reaching act was to announce that the church was the only path to God. Every other church and faith was anathema. The church, by the way, let me stop. Pope Gregory, I don't know if you know this, Pope Gregory was the first one to call Mary Magdalene a whore, to combine the three Marys. And Pope Benedict would continue that. He would never say, oh, that was a mistake. So Pope Gregory was the first one to remove Mary Magdalene as Yeshua's eternal consort, his divine equal. Okay, let's continue. The church was supreme according to Gregory, and the Pope himself was the highest possible human authority. Gregory, as the historian Malcolm Lambert notes, awakened in the laity a new sense of responsibility for reform and a higher expectation of moral standards for their clergy. A genie was unleashed, which could never again be put back into its bottle. The moral life of the clergy became a rallying point for reformers, dissenters, and disaffected churchgoers. In the early years of the 12th century, this popular reforming zeal became even more strident. Charismatic wandering preachers whipped up parishes and often whole towns into an anti-clerical frenzy. Tanchem of Antwerp, who was active in the Netherlands, inspired such fanatical devotion that his followers were said to drink his bathwater. He did not travel anywhere without an armed guard, a measure that proved futile, as Tanchem was eventually stabbed by a priest. A rogue Benedict monk, Henry of Lausanne, caused huge unrest in Le Mans and effectively ousted the bishop. Peter of Brooms was even more radical, inciting people to break into churches and destroy crucifixes. He held public burnings of crosses until Good Friday, 1139. A mob threw him onto one of his own bonfires. Arnold of... God, do you see this? This is... What makes people fucking go insane like this? This is cult behavior. Drinking a bathwater... A rogue monk stabbing this guy, and then this other guy is thrown in his own burning, pillage and burn. I mean, he launched it. Okay, so let me go back. He held public burnings of crosses until on Good Friday, 1139, a mob threw him onto one of his bonfires. Arnold of Brescia was yet more extreme than Peter. He launched an attack on Rome in 1146 and declared it a republic. It was not until 1154 that the Pope was able to return to the Vatican. Arnold was burned at the stake. His ashes were scattered in the Tiber to prevent his disciples from making them into relics. What the fuck? Okay. However, while the church was disposing of Arnold in Rome, an even more serious threat appeared far to the north on the banks of the Rhine. The first Cathars. The Cathars first appeared in historical record in 1143. Ebervin, the prior of Premonstration House of Seinfeld near Cologne, wrote to the great Cistercian reformer Bernard of Clairvaux that two heretical groups had been uncovered when they had been heard discussing a point of doctrine. These Cathars were brought before the Bishop of Cologne for a reading. It was established that their church were organized in a three-tier system of elect, believers, and listeners. Did you hear that? Elect, believe. This is interesting. They did not baptize with water, but through the laying of the hand. They condemned marriage, but Everbin could not find out why either, because they dared not reveal it, or more probably they did not know. More ominously, the archbishop learned that the heresy had a very large number of adherents scattered throughout the world, and that it had lain concealed from the time of the martyrs even to their own day. Most of the heretics were persuaded to recant, although 2 of their numbers, apparently a bishop and a deacon, remained unrepentant after 3 days' intense debate with both clergy and laity. Before the sentence could be pronounced, an angry mob seized the 2 heretics and threw them into a fire. What was different about this new heresy was that it was not merely anti-clerism of the sort propagated by Henry of Lausanne and the motley assortment of libertarians, preachers who had been such a colorful feature of religious life during the 12th century up to the point. These new heretics had organized themselves properly. Indeed, the 2 groups discovered at Cologne were not merely dissenters from Catholicism. They were members of an underground church that had had time to build itself up and put itself in direct opposition to Rome and all that it stood for. As Malcolm Lambert puts it in the Cathars, offered a direct, headlong challenge to the Catholic Church, which is dismissed outright as the Church of Satan. The Cathars thought and saw and talked to them. The Catholic Church was the Church of Satan. To be clear, I find that fascinating. Nothing like this had ever happened before, and suddenly the new heresy seemed to be everywhere. Its rise concerned no less a churchman than Bernard of Clairvaux, who, after receiving Erbon's letter about events in the Rhineland, composed 2 sermons denouncing the heretics. He equated the heretics with the little foxes in the Song of Songs, 2:15, catch the foxes, the little foxes, before they ruin our vineyard in bloom. Bernard's tracts are full of the standard accusations. He warns of the heretics' cunning and secrecy, and accuses them of sexual misconduct and aberration. As to what could be done about that situation, he comes close to condemning the burghers of Cologne, who had cast their Cathars into the flames. Their zeal we approve, but we do not advise the imitation of these actions, because faith is to be produced by persuasion, not imposed by force. He goes on to add, however, it would without a doubt be better that they should be coerced by the sword of him who beareth not the sword in vain. Then they should be allowed to draw away many other persons into their error. In other words, he could tolerate people being quietly heretical at home, but they could not be allowed to seek out converts. As for punishment, the worst thing he advised in expulsion from the church in light of what was happening in the Languedoc in the early years of the following century. Bernard's views are remarkable, humane, and tolerant. If the church had followed his lead, he was, after all, the most powerful figure in the church of his time. Then history might have been different. A decisive approach. Bernard himself visited the Languedoc in 1145, suspicious that the Count of Toulouse, Alphonse Jourdan, was not doing enough to check the growth of heresy in his land, whereby Bernard's visit happened before or after he composed his brass anti-heretical sermons, we do not know. What we do know, however, is that the man famed for his preaching skills met a decidedly mixed reaction. He got off to a good start in Albi. The papal legate were there not the most popular of people, and Bernard knew he had to make his words count. His sermon attacked Henry of Lausanne, who was then in the Albi area and was known to have supporters there. It was a rousing performance. Concluded his sermon, Bernard asked all those in the congregation who accepted the Catholic Church to raise their right hand. Everyone put up their hand. The moment marked the end of Henry's support in the Languedoc. It's a very interesting village, by the way. The land of heresy. Events in the village of Verfier, to the northeast of Toulouse, made Bernard realize that other forms of heresy were still very much alive. He preached in the church there, but then he tried to deliver another sermon outside the church. His words were rendered inaudible by local knights who deliberately wrapped their swords on their shields to drown out his voice. Bernard was humiliated, and he was laughed out of town. Knights. What kind of knights do you think they were? They would have been Knights Templars. The incident could be ascribed as such as anti-clerism, which was rife in the South.
at the time as to heresy, but to Bernard these were only one explanation. He returned fuming to his monastery in Champagne, declaring the whole of the Languedoc to be a land of many heresies, and that needed a great deal of preaching. The great deal of preaching urged by Bernard was largely forthcoming. Christendom has more pressing matters to deal with in the shape of the Second Crusade, with Bernard himself in taking an active role in its early stages. However, once the crusade was on its way to the east, the Pope, Eugenius III, did try to do something about the growth of heresy. He issued a papal bull in 1148 forbidding anyone to help heretics in Gascony, Provence, and elsewhere. In 1157, the Archbishop of Rheims presided over a meeting of the provincial council which condemned a group of heretics called Peoples, who rejected marriage. At the Council of Tours in 1163, Pope Alexander III presided over a gathering of cardinals and bishops who reiterated Eugenius' directive by passing legislation directed against Albigenians, so-called because of the great heresy was flourishing unchecked in the town of Albi, and those who helped them. The same year, Hildegard, have you heard of her? Hildegard de Bijon had an apocalyptic vision in which she saw the emergence of the Cathars as evidence that the devil had been released from the bottomless pit. Only destruction could now come to mankind. Holy shit. If you guys don't know who Hildegard of Bijon is, you need to check it out. In the late 90s and 2000, there was a massive resurgence of Hildegard. She was a mother superior. She was a musician, an herbalist, a poet. Okay? And she is, people were playing her song everywhere. You could go to any bookstore and here was Hildegard de Bijons and women's voices in a choir. Okay? So for her, and this is kind of shitty. Okay? I'm just going to be straight up. For her to say she wasn't responsible. If this is true, she's an asshole. I'm just going to, because she put everyone's life in jeopardy. Listen to this. Again, Hildegard of Bijon had an apocalyptic vision in which she saw the emergence of the Cathars as evidence that the devil had been released from the bottomless pit. Only destruction could now come to mankind. Jesus Christ, man. The Cathars, or good Christians as they call themselves, must have been horrified to learn the things that were being said of them. The rumors that they were participants in satanic ceremonies were no more than the product of the imagination of their critics. The church was keen to paint heretics of all denomination in the blackest possible colors, and in doing so they frequently resorted to cliches and outright fabrication. The Jews, for example, were said to steal Christian children and sacrifice them in secret. As for the Cathars, they were far from satanic. Many of their contemporaries regarded them as better Christians than the Catholics, a fact that the church was later forced to acknowledge. Their virtues were not only thing that set them apart. The Cathars' beliefs further removed them from the mainstream of Christian life. They inherited much of their doctrine from the Bogomils. Catharism was dualistic, holding that the material world is evil and the creation of the devil himself. The true God existed in a world of eternal light beyond the dark abyss of human existence. Both the Cathars and the Bogomils rejected the church and all its sacraments. The only sacrament they observed was the Consolamentum, which was a form of baptism, and if administered on the deathbed, extreme unction. The only prayer both churches used was the Lord's Prayer, with the Cathars substituting the phrase super substantial bread for daily bread. Bogomils and Cathars alike dismiss most of the Old Testament and its belligerent deity. Did you hear that? Belligerent. As satanic. You gotta be an idiot to read the Old Testament and not fucking go, who the fuck is this person? Why am I reading this? Wait, hang on. Why am I reading this? What am I learning from this? Is this saving me to learn that? Because really, I'd rather, tell me about Yeshua. Tell me about what he said, what he did, who he healed. Tell me about that. I don't want to hear this. This is stupid. And I have to agree with them. I could not read. I could not read it. Okay, so, yes. Well, I did, unfortunately. I was in a Lutheran school in Hong Kong when I was 14 years old, and my theologian professor knew I'd find the sex scenes, and I'd ask her, well, I don't understand. Why is this woman threatening Joseph to have sex with her? And if she doesn't, she'll yell and say that he's, it's like, fuck. And I'm reading this shit at 14 going, how do you think it affects children to read this shit? Do you understand what I'm saying? I mean, I don't care if this is disrespectful. I think it's time, respect is something you earn. You don't just get it. Okay? So, because I'm a spiritualist, not a Satanist, okay, just so you know, is when you read, oh shit, I forgot his name. Zachariah Stitchin's translation of the Sumerian tablets on how we were made. When you see structures that make no sense, that we still can't replicate, you know that Darwinism theory of how we were made doesn't fly. It doesn't fucking fly. So the only answer is Enlil. That's what most of us agree on as to and I've said this before, and the God of the Old Testament. We agree that it's just not, it doesn't even make sense. And the fucked up thing is the Cathars wanted the truth. They were seekers of truth, and they did not know how to find the truth. Okay. Both movements regarded the entity of the church, Catholic in the West, Orthodox in the East, as the church of Satan, and rejected it utterly. Church buildings, the churches, chapels, and cathedrals themselves were likewise seen as no more holy than any other building. Neither sect built places of worship, preferring to meet people and to meet in people's homes, in barns, or in fields. Anti-dualistic propaganda produced at the time tells of Bogomil monk who feigned orthodoxy and built a church on the banks of the Bosphorus, putting a latrine behind the altar in order to desecrate it. Similarly, in Toulouse, a Cathar was said to have entered a local church and emptied his bowels on the altar, cleaning himself up with the altar cloth. What? I'm sorry. If you think you got some fucking wild ass hippies, and you got some wild ass hippies here. I'm sorry. Cathars were like hippies. They're like, I don't give a fuck. If they'd known India existed, they would have gone to India on foot. I'm not joking. These people were too much. They would have said, yeah, I'm out of here. Fuck this. This is stupid. I'm laughing. It's like insane. Wow. In both faiths, the cross was seen as the instrument of Christ's torture. Bogomils and Cathars refused to venerate it. They interpreted the Eucharist allegory and took the docetic line on Christ's nature, his miracles, passions, and resurrection, believing them to be no more than apparitions. Cathars, and why would they think of apparitions? Why would they think that? Well, because they couldn't make sense of it. They couldn't make sense of any of this. No church tithing's heretical. Right. No church tithing's, which would have been heretical. When you think about what Yeshua is saying in the books, right? Like, and his mirror, walking on water, turning water into wine, this and that and the other. He's an alchemist. He understands. He's so evolved. And I've seen people do it. I saw one person do that in my life in terms of actually performing what people would call psychic surgery. And one person, I heard the story on Gaia.com, and he's the real deal. He's not bullshitting. He doesn't need to. Anyway, people have attested to him. He can heal by touch. Period. Okay? There are people that can do that walking the planets, and they keep it under wraps. It is word of mouth only because it is not fucking safe. That's why Jesus is coming back. Oh, really? In this world where it's not even safe to say that you are psychic or you're a remote viewer, you're not safe. Watch the movies that are about people that get, knocked out, and they wake up suddenly being able to do all this shit. And what happens next? The alphabet channels start coming in to see to study you, to kind of say, okay, come here, we're going to study you. It's not safe to come clean about what you can do. And though it was on Gaia, most of these people don't go on Gaia. You know what I'm saying? They're not going to say shit. Why would they? Okay, so I find that interesting. So they're not into the cross as a symbol. They think it's a symbol of torture, which, let's be honest, okay? I can't disagree with them. They think it's an apparition. They don't think he actually existed. They're not sure. Cathars and Bogomils regarded marriage as fornication and saw it as a means by which souls became entrapped in the material world through the thoroughly distasteful business of childbirth. This is the same. We have the same philosophy. A lot of us in the spiritual community, I'm not one of them, but a lot of people are. They feel that to have children right here, right now, in the spiritual community, if you have children, you're adding more karma to your dharma. That you are more likely to come back. That you're more likely going to spin back into 3D, which is wrong. But that's not here or there. The point is there are people right now saying, if you have children, you have karma. And to be honest, are they wrong? No, because if you have a child and you're raising the child, you are taking on karma. That is not a joke. You're being triggered by your child. You're being pushed for shit. You're being put into position you would never be if you had no children. That's why people are saying child free and fucking single, and I've got money and I'm traveling. It's a real choice. In other words, yes, in some aspect, yes, falling in love with a man or a woman adds karma. Their karma becomes your karma. So if you've got a man you fall in love with, if you're a woman and he's a fucking drug addict, his karma, him fucking up becomes your karma. So it's actually correct. They weren't wrong. Okay? So while there is little to no evidence concerning the role of women in the Bogomil church, the Cathars regarded women as equal of men. Boom. That was it. That was it. Because the connection between the Knights Templars, who were guardians of Mary Magdalene and her truth and her children or child or whatever, and the Cathars is right. It's related. So, regarding women as equal to men, and Catharism offered women the chance to participate fully in the faith at all levels. At all levels. That means that in their religions, in their Hindu religion, I'll tell you which one. The Krishna religion, the Ishkan religion, Ishkan, does not allow women to be gurus. They've just started to allow women to be gurus. That means teachers. And Mary Magdalene was a teacher. If you read the Gospel of Mary, after she's seen his resurrection, they're saying to her, the apostles, tell us what he told you. And they're not even fucking ready. They got cotton in their ears. They got ego. Oh my God, this is a woman going to teach me? A woman's going to teach me? Are you kidding? There was none of that with the Cathars. That's the point. The structure of the Cathar church was derived from the Bogomil model. Cathars were divided into three classes: listeners, believers, and the perfect. The listeners were people who chose not to commit to the faith wholeheartedly. They might hear the occasional sermon, but no more. This is what they're calling householders. In Hindustani religion, when you don't fully commit to a religion, you are called a householder. That means, yes, you go in for, the temple, you do your thing, but you're not doing it every Sunday, but you believe in God and you do your own thing. You meditate, you chant. But you're a householder because you're taking care of your family, you got a job or business, whatever. Okay? At this stage, listeners would hear sermons that were close in spirit to those of evangelistic Christianity. If they chose to become believers, they would be asked to participate in a ceremony known as the Convenaza, which is formally bound them to the Cathar church. Believers formed the majority of the movement. They were ordinary men and women who had ordinary jobs and who lived in towns or villages. They did not lead lives of monastic seclusion, and they did not have to abstain from meat, wine, or sex. Instead, they were very much involved in the world of matter. They were taught to be in the world, but not of it, to follow the basic teachings of the Gospels, to love one another, to live a life of faith, and to seek God. Believers were not exposed to dualistic doctrine, which were usually reserved for the ears of the perfect alone. Hang on, there's a puzzle I got to do. Bear with me. Okay, good. The perfect were the austere top-level Cathars who were effectively the movement's priesthood. In both the Cathar and the Bogomil faith, the perfect were held in the highest regard. They were seen as embodying the Holy Spirit, being the living church itself. They were nothing less than living icons. Okay? It starts out the next chapter, the Consolamentum. Central to Catharism was the baptism rite known as the Consolamentum. It was means by which a believer could become a perfect and thereby attain salvation. Without it, the believer would be condemned to remain in the world of matter in their next incarnation. Did you hear that? Because that's big. Because you see, in the Catholic Church, they don't believe in incarnation. Remember that? You go, you fuck up, you're absolved, and you go straight to heaven. Okay. Forever. Okay. The Consolatum survives in two versions, one written in Latin dating from 1235 to 1250, and one in Occitan, the language of the Languedoc, which dates from the late 1200s, although both were probably based on one 12th century Latin original. According to these documents, the ceremony led by a Cathar elder began with a blessing, which was followed by a recitation of the Lord's Prayer, in which the word supersubstantial bread replaced the more usual daily bread. The elder read from the first 17 verses of St. John's Gospel, which was then according to the Occitan version, followed by a series of requests for forgiveness. The elder placed the book, either the New Testament or St. John's Gospel, on a table covered with a cloth and explained in detail to the believer the import of what he or she was about to do. A line-by-line exegesis of the Lord's Prayer then followed. The elder reminded the supplicant of the need for repentance, citing Matthew 6:15. But if ye will not forgive man their trespasses, no more shall your Father forgive your trespasses. Let me read that again. But if ye will not forgive men their trespasses, no more shall your Father forgive your trespasses. So clearly, forgive others and forgive yourself. Forgive others and you will be forgiven. Forgive yourself. So you're not looped in the karmic bullshit of resentment. Sometimes, hang on. Did I read? Oh, yeah. Sometimes there was a break in the ceremony at this point, but this was not mandatory. What followed next was the Consolamentum itself. The elder announced that the baptism the supplicant was about to receive by the laying on hands had been preserved from time of the apostles until the time it had passed from good men to good men, until the present moment, and it will continue to do so until the end of the world. The believer was urged to keep Christ's commandments to the utmost of his or her ability, and was told not to commit adultery, kill, lie, swear an oath, nor steal. They were to turn the other cheek toward all who persecuted them, and were expected to hate this world and the things of this world. The believer pledged to do these things and gave the elder the melioramanton, or ritual greeting by which believers honored the perfect. The elder then took the holy book from the table and placed it on the believer's head. All the perfect present then placed their right hand on the believer's. Did you hear that? On the top of the head. The crown chakra. On the top of the head. The ceremony ended with a further request for forgiveness and a ritual known as the Act of Peace, in which all present kissed each other on the cheek and also kissed the book. The believer was now consoled, or he or she had become a perfect. The life of a perfect. Do you have any questions or comments? What do you think? Isn't that wild? This whole did you know about this whole other Christian sect that rebelled against the Roman Catholic Church, that was questioning everything, and that really had taken a true vow of poverty? It's a hell of a book, isn't it? The life of a perfect. The new perfect would be expected to keep the vows of the rest of his or her life. Did you hear that? Her or him. Her or him. I love that. The slightest slip would necessitate a new consoling and also invalidate any consolamentum that he or she had administered. The slip was known euphemistically as making a bad end. The duties of perfect were rigorous. They were expected to pray 15 times a day and to fast on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. You know who that sounds like? Pray 15 times a day and to fast. It sounds like the Hindus. Well, there's a particular Krishna movement where you have to chant Hare Krishna 16 rounds. To chant it takes 2.5 hours. I kid you not. I used to actually do it. It takes 2.5 hours, and you get into a bubble of bliss. I mean, when you chant a mantra, you chant a mantra, right? The fasting reminds me of Ramadan. Fasting. And of course, there is fasting in Catholicism. In all religions, actually, fasting is involved. So they're fasting Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Prayers were to be said on horseback, when crossing rivers, and when entering the homes of believers. If the perfect, who usually traveled in pairs, came across goods belonging to someone, they were only to return them if they were sure the goods would be reunited to the rightful owner. If not, then the perfect were instructed to leave the goods where they found them. Did you hear that? No theft. If they happened upon a bird or an animal caught in a trap, they were to release the bird or animal on condition that they were able to recompense the hunter with a gift or money. When visiting believers, did you hear that? They're not fucking trapping animals. They're releasing animals from traps. And then paying the hunter, leaving probably a silver coin where the animal should have been. That's what I'm visualizing. Okay? They were to release the bird or animal on condition that they were able to recompense their hunter with money or gifts. When visiting believers, they were expected to bless them and their food. If they were dining together, and to leave a small gift in payment. Many believers waited until they were close to death to take the Consolamentum, in which case the cloth in the book would be laid on the believer's bed. If the believer subsequently recovered, he or she was usually advised to seek reconciliation at a later date, because they knew the human experience was the human experience. It's like you weren't in other words, they didn't treat you like shit. They were like, yeah, we know it's hard to be, we know it's hard, but don't worry about it. We'll do it again. I love this. It's like wild. Once a month, all the perfect in a given area would gather to meet their deacon and confess their sins, a ceremony known as the Consolamentum. 3 times a year, the perfects were expected to undertake 40-day fasts, mirroring Christ's experience in the wilderness. From November 13th to Christmas Eve, from Quincasimaga, Sunday, the Sunday before Ash Wednesday, to Easter, and from Pentecost to the Feast of the Apostles, Peter and Paul, on June 29th. The perfect were notable for the way they dressed, as well as for their rigorous observations. They wore black robes with a cord tied around their waist. The spread of Catharism. The appeal of Catharism was as instant as it was profound. The Cathar faith undermined the authority of the Catholic Church by offering what seemed to be a gentler, more benign version of Christianity. Yeah, there's no Old Testament. No one wants to read that shit. And it's shit. I'm sorry. But the New Testament is a light. It's a light. It's fresh air. It's a sea spray on your face. It's you being able to forgive yourself. It's you not being told you were born in sin. Introduction. By the time the church became aware of the Cathars, 2 things were apparent. Catharism was already a fully fledged church, and the Cathars, along with fellow travelers such as the Publicans and the Waldensians, seemed to be everywhere. Their ideas looked like a threat to the church and to Christian society in general. In 1163, more Cathars were unearthed in Cologne. They went to the stake like their co-religious had done 20 years before. In England, a group known as Publicans, who had been Cathars under another name, preached at Canterbury and Oxford, hoping to win new converts. They were denounced, branded, and thrown out into the winter snow. People were forbidden to help them or give them shelter. All the publicans died of exposure. That's insane. In 1165, a group of the Cathars came to light in Lombers, a town 10 miles, 16 kilometers to the south of Albi. The church took the threat of these Cathars very seriously. The heretics were arraigned before 6 bishops, 8 abbots, and the local vicomte, and Constance, sister to the King of France and wife to Raymond V, 5th Count of Toulouse. The Cathars themselves must have known that they had to be careful. Word that their brethren in Germany had been burned for their beliefs would no doubt have reached them. Led by a prefect called Olivier, the Cathars at Lombard engaged a debate with the clergy. They answered questions astutely, referring frequently to the New Testament. However, they could not dissemble on the issue of oath-taking. This was something that Cathars would not do under any circumstances. In other words, the Catholic Church was asking them to give them an oath to the Catholic system. And they could not. They answered, they claimed biblical authority, citing Matthew 5:33 to 3:7. But I say unto you, swear not at all, neither by heaven, for it is God's seat, nor yet by the earth, for it is footstool, neither by Jerusalem, for it is the city of that great king. Your communication shall be yea, yea, nay, nay, for whatsoever is more than that cometh of evil. People of any type, from the Cathars in front of these fucks, anyone that would force you to claim an oath, I find it ironic. I hope you're quick with me. I hope you got what I just got. Some places are being forced to claim an oath to a certain part of the world. Isn't that interesting? And what does it say in Matthew 5:33? Do not swear an oath at all, neither for heaven, for it is God's seat, no by earth, for it is his footstool, neither by Jerusalem, for it is the city of that great king. Your communication shall be yea, yea, and then nay, nay, for whatsoever is more than that cometh of evil. In medieval society, the swearing of oath was the standard way of sealing an agreement before lord and vassal, between church and state. It was the closest thing the Middle Age had to a legally binding contract, and to refuse to swear an oath was an act of the greatest subversion. Olivier and his fellow Cathars launched a scathing attack on the church, denouncing it as hypocritical and accusing the assembled bishops of being little better than ravening wolves. Despite this, the Lombards, Cathars, were allowed to remain at large. Anti-clerical feeling was rife in the Languedoc, and there were no doubt many people in Lombards that day who, while not necessarily supporting the Cathars in their beliefs, were unwilling to see them burnt. Such apparent toleration of heresy did not go unnoticed and stored up trouble for the future. Wild, isn't it? Wild. I think it's wild. This book is wild. Again, I'm reading from the book. It's called, and I have two books from Sean Martin. His name is Sean Martin. This book is called The Cathars, Their History and Myth Revealed. It's an absolutely stunning book. Stunning with beautiful images. Beautiful. I mean, the man kicked ass. Yeah. Let me see. I mean, it basically, let me go to their downfall. I'm sorry. Hang on, okay? Because I read it the last time I did a live, and I read the downfall, and it was fucking brutal. A pope, and I forgot which pope, but one of the popes basically launched an attack on the Cathars, and it was very similar to what happened to Friday the 13th with the Knights Templars, with the King of France and the Pope of that time. I think it was, I'm trying to remember the name of that Pope, I forgot, but that attack was launched by the Pope and the King of France against the Knights Templars. This Pope that launched the initial attack against the Cathars, yeah, that was a different Pope. Can you imagine popes fucking eradicating a people that just want to fucking pray to God in their own way? That's insane shit. That's just pure evil. I am going to read about the legacy of the Cathars. I think I'm going to go with that. So that's towards the end of the book. And this is scholarly, right? We're having a discussion. It's a big book. How many pages? Hang on. So I'm not going to read the whole of it. I think it's not a lot, actually. It's 171 pages. Thereabouts. Yeah, okay. So the legacy, this is chapter 10. Little written testimony of Catharism has survived, and so many questions remain, not only about Cathar thought and practice, but also about the movement's relationship to the troubadours and the Knights Templars and the myth of the Holy Grail. Now you know why I wanted this book, right? Introduction. Very few Cathars tracts have come down to us. Most of the surviving works come from Italy, where literacy levels were generally higher than in Languedoc, where the disputes between various Cathar factions encouraged policism. Moreover, Italy's geographical closeness to the Balkans meant that books arriving from the east, such as the Bocamil, Secret Supper, and the Vision of Isaiah, would generally first appear in the west on the Italian peninsula. These two works were known by the end of the 12th century. The Secret Supper enlarges upon the Bogomil Cathar creation myth, in which Satan is cast out of heaven for wishing to be greater than God. In this story, Satan pretended to repent, so God forgave him and let him do what he wanted. With his newfound freedom, Satan created the world of matter and made human beings from the primordial clay. Each soul was a trapped angel from heaven. Satan then convinced humanity that he was God, an action that caused the true God to send Christ, a spirit who entered Mary through her ear. His mission was to enlighten humanity as to the ways of the devil and to reveal the truth about God. The vision of Isaiah was accepted by both the moderate and absolute schools, as it showed a material world and a firmament riven the battle between satanic and godly forces. The most important surviving Cathar tract is the Book of the Two Principles, which was written in 1240s. The author was probably John of Lugia, a Cathar from the Albanesian school, which was part of the Absolutist Church of Disanzano. It has been described as the most decisive evidence that the Cathars were evolving their own ideas about the nature of dualism, and they were not content simply to recycle Bogomil material. The Book of the Two Principles is a sustained attack on the modern school, which the author regards as being little better than Catholicism. The work makes a case for there being two coeternal principles of good and evil, each of which created their own sphere, heaven and the material world respectively, and the true God cannot be the author of evil. The verse in the Gospel of John which states, "All things were made by it," the word of God, "and without it was made nothing," was interpreted as meaning that nothing, that is, the material world, was made by Satan. The true world was the domain of the real creator, God. This was not a world of matter, but a world higher with its own laws. Also, extant is a very late tract, possibly from the third quarter of the 14th century, called the Vindication of the Church of God. It represents the Cathars as a persecuted and martyred church suffering before the appearance of the Antichrist and the Last Judgment. It states that this Church of God has received such power from our Lord Jesus Christ that sins are pardoned by its prayer. It says, this church refrained from adultery, that this church refrains from theft, and concluded that this church keeps and observes all the commandments of the law of life, in sharp contrast to the wicked Roman church. You have to understand, just remember, damn near all the popes had mistresses and children out of wedlock. Okay? So it's not like this propaganda. They knew. Okay, the Cathars knew. Everyone knew. Everyone knew. Just watch this show, The Borgias. It's based on a real. It's true. It's based on truth. Lucrezia Borgia, her father, who was the first Spanish pope in Italy, he was a scoundrel. His sons were scoundrels. Okay, and they were. And in the book, The Prince, written by Machiavelli, Nicholas Machiavelli, was based on the Borgias. That's how bad they were. They were bad. They were evil. So, they weren't wrong. The last Cathars, let's read that. The last Cathars haunted the remote valleys of the Piedmont. Here they coexisted with groups of fugitive Valdensians, only occasionally breaking their cover, for example, to murder a priest who tipped off the Inquisition about their location. In 1332, and to mete out the same treatment to two inquisitions in 1365 and 1374, once enemies, the Valdesians and the Cathars were now forced together by circumstance and came to see persecution as a special mark of the true church. The persecutions continued in the form of sporadic military actions, and slowly but surely the Inquisition closed in on the last remaining communities. Antonio di Santimo di Saviglano's Inquisition of 1387 to 1389 uncovered the last two major Cathars, Antonio di Calosno and Jacob Beck. De Galonasta had been a Franciscan in Cherry near Turan, but in 1362 he had been introduced to heresy at a house in Andezona, a small town in the northeast of Chiria. The ceremony he participated in seems to have been part Valdesian and part Cathar, which indicates that to this very late date, the Piedmont Cathars were practically a hybrid form of the faith. This degenerate form of Catharism seems to have embraced some bizarre rituals. Antonio de Galasta testimony states that at a certain point he was ritually struck on the head with a sword in order to induct him into the heresy. He was then given a dualistic instruction in which God was extolled as the creator of heaven but not of earth, the later being the work of a fearsome dragon, which exercised more power in the earthly realms than the true God. Fearsome dragon. Draconians? Reptilians? Interesting. Jacob Beck's Confessions makes it clear that not all of the Piedmont Cathars entertained notions about dragons. He seemed to have been instructed in the more orthodox Cathar view that material creation was under the sway of Satan. He also told the Inquisition of links between the Piedmont Cathars and Croatian Bogomols, who had apparently converted back to the faith and who had their own pope, which means the perfect, if you remember, the perfect. Savigliano also learned that after a somewhat itinerant existence, Beck had settled in Chiria, where moderate Catharism was rife, and that a number of other Cathars had gone from there to Bosnia for further instructions. Both Galonazda and Beck were predictably burned at the stakes. Western Catharism died with them. By way of postscript, the Inquisition returned to Chiria in 1412 and dug up 15 dead Cathars, some of who had been named by Beck as having journeyed to Bosnia. They had made a bonfire of the remains. They were apparently no living Cathars left to burn. This is insane. So, some of the Holy Scriptures, because as you know, Christianity, just like Buddhism, just like most of them, it's an oral tradition until somebody sits down and starts writing it, right? We all know. So what we know about oral traditions is shit shifts, okay? Unless you're a highly evolved, highly put together person. There are people who can recite the Quran, the entire fucking Quran, without stopping. I'm sure there are people, I've never heard of them, but I'm sure there's people who can do the same with the Bible. I'm sure. There's got to be at least one human being. But I've heard of the Quran, I've heard that to be true, just so you know. In Buddhism, similar. So, when they started writing down the Cathars' views of reality, right? Most of it, whatever was written, was destroyed. When the Pope, this is in the other book by Sean Martin, when the popes decided to just destroy, they destroyed everyone. One of the comments quoted, that's recorded, when the knights were asked the Pope, I think it was a Pope, or he was one of the underlings of the Pope. Anyway, they went after a whole community, 222 people, I believe, women, men, and child. And they said, what do we do? I mean, innocent people may die. And he said, God will know them by who they are. I mean, he didn't give a fuck. He was like, just kill all of them. And whoever survives, I guess they're supposed to. It was brutal. The Cathar treasure. Since the demise of the Cathars, many legends have circulated about them. Most of these stories have centered on the so-called Cathar treasure, which was said to have disappeared during the siege of Montségur, on the relationship between the Cathars and the troubadours and the Knights Templar. While much of this speculative seems to be the result of the romanticism of the faith written by such people as Napoleon Perrat, 1809 to 1888, and Dido Rocher, 1877 to 1978, such legends have actually been circulating since the 1320s at least. They have played a crucial role in shaping the mystique surrounding the Cathars, which in turn has gone a long way in helping to retain the interest and imagination of the public, of historians, and of generations of mystics. Perhaps the most enduring myth about the Cathars is that they possess the Holy Grail. The first published version of the Grail myth, Le Conte de Grail, was written in around 1811 by Chrétien de Troyes. It recounts the attempt of King Arthur's knights to find the Grail. Troy died before he finished the story, so in this version, the Grail is never found. The tale was picked up by Wolfram von Eschbach, whose name remains closely associated with the Grail story. Von Eschenbach's greatest work is Parzival, which is often understood to be a complete allegory of the path of spiritual development which betrays the influence of Eastern philosophy. Von Eschenbach is thought to have traveled to the East on a crusade. Wow. He continued to write about the Grail in Titurel and identified the Grail castle as being in the Pyrenees. Moreover, he described the Lord of the Grail castle as being called Perila. The fact that Monseigneur is in the Pyrenees and that its lord, Raymond Perel, often signed his name in Latin, Perila, has led to much speculation. Von Eschenbach's account has made it harder for historians to dismiss a connection between the Grail and the Cathars. It at least suggests that the Grail myth had been part of the Cathar story since the time of the good Christian and is not just the invention of later writers. That's deep. The Vatican would do the same today if new ideas gained power. Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, they've proven it. The Grail described in Parzival is a stone, and it is reminiscent of the stone of the philosopher known to alchemy. However, there have been alternative interpretation of the Grail. It is often said to be the cup that Christ used for the Last Supper, and that later contained the blood he shed at Calvary. More controversially, it has been said to represent the womb of Mary Magdalene. And many of us believe it's the womb. We know it's not the cup. Many of us know. And how do we know? It's a memory. It's a soul's memory. And many of us have turned our backs to these churches because we knew they were fucking lying, and we knew they were lying by omission, and they were lying to control, and they were regurgitating more propaganda to control the masses, and we knew it. Okay, so representing the womb of Mary Magdalene, which receives his seed after she married Yeshua at Cana. One hypothesis holds that the Cathar treasure, which was smuggled out of Montségur shortly before the surrender, was in fact the Holy Grail, which was then either hidden in a nearby cave or entrusted to the Knights Templars. It would have been entrusted to the Knights Templars. Friday the 13th, my friend. That's all I gotta say on that. The sergeant of Montségur, Ambert of Sal, however, told the Inquisition that the Cathar treasure was merely money and precious stones. Of course. You would play to their greed, their material greed, not to spiritual greed, because they were not truly spiritual men. It's brilliant. Oh, it's gold and diamonds, go over there. The Magdalene hypothesis suggests that the word Holy Grail, sang grade, in French is in fact a misspelling of sang réel. Sang réel means real blood. The holy blood, meaning the bloodline of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. It was one of Cathar's inner teachings which was passed only to the perfect. That the Magdalene was Jesus' wife. This is puzzling since the Cathars despised marriage. They despised marriage because they knew it would imbue them with karma. And in the material world with these motherfuckers ruling people, that would be difficult. And why would you bring children to this shit show? They're the same as us. They just don't have a fucking iPhone. Basically. Furthermore, this was not a belief inherited from the Bogomils. It is possibly that the idea that Yeshua and Mary Magdalene were married reflected a popular Languedocian tradition, but we cannot be certain. The Troubadours and the Knights Templars. I want to read this. I actually have right next to me the Holy Blood and Holy Grail as well, and we may jump into that. I don't know. I'm having such a good time. What time is it? Holy fuck, it's late. I'm having a good time. I am hoping you're having a good time too. Oh, no, I don't think they were married. I know they were married. I know they were married. Like my last breath. Do you know why I know they were married? I'm going to tell you why. And I've told this story so many times. Those of you who follow me, be patient, okay? I was in meditation with a crystal to put in energy of the Buddha, because I actually do that with crystal. I infuse them with light codes, okay? And in that meditation, I couldn't get into Buddha. Buddha would not come, but you know what came? I saw Mary Magdalene and Yeshua getting married. Swear to God. Uninvited. It's not something I chase. So here I am watching them getting married. They're laughing. They're gorgeous. They're wearing linens and whites and creams and very pale creams, okay? And the next scene I see her nude, but she's not nude. She's on a beach. Again, I didn't know shit about Gaza. I didn't know they had a beach. I mean, I'm ignorant, okay? I didn't know that. I didn't know how Palestine... And I'm seeing her tan skin. She's got dark, gorgeous, that beautiful brownish, reddish tinge with this long, dark hair down to her waist. And it's blowing. The wind is blowing. And in front of her is a red dress. It's like she's covering her breast and her belly and so forth. And she's walking towards him. And I'm seeing her through the vision of Yeshua. I know I'm watching it through his viewpoint. And she's walking towards him smiling. And then it stopped. And I started just bringing energy. I still have that crystal. I will never sell it. I started putting the energy of Yeshua's and her, but mostly Yeshua, to be honest, in that crystal. I'm like going, wait, hang on, red? I've said this story many times. Red dress? 6 hours later, I'm making dinner. I'm watching Freddie Silda talking about the Knights Templars with Regina Meredith on Gaia.com. And then he says, yes, Mary Magdalene, it's the Knights Templars. Mary Magdalene was thought to be part of, she was a high priestess in the Temple of Isis, and they all wore red dresses. The universe confirmed what I'd seen. That's why I know they were married. It was a vision, and then another vision, and then it was confirmed 6 hours later. I was minding my own business, just Knights Templars, and that happened in 2021 or no, it was 2022. And I don't know what month, but it happened. And I was in shock. I was like, what? That's how I know they were married. And I started speaking to many people who are not Christian. We are not fucking, I didn't have parents who were Christian. I'm not kidding. They believed in God, but that was it, okay? And my mom believed in reincarnation, and she was part of the New Age movement in the late 60s, early 70s, just so you know. My father didn't give one fuck about religion, just so you know, okay, at all, okay? Just so we're clear. And many of my friends who are in the spiritual community, who are not part of the New Age, but the ancient wisdom, we want the truth, whatever it takes, right? They've had visitation of Yeshua and Mary Magdalene, unfucking asked for, not seeking it. Now, of course, I seek it, but no, we're not asking for it. And these entities are coming, these souls, this divine couple is coming to us. And they are married. It is the divine sacred marriage. Okay, so that's how I know. And I know because other people are having it going, oh my God, what the hell's going on? What kind of crystal? It's actually right here. I'm looking at it. It's the size of a man's thumb, like almost phallic. But it's a cactus quartz crystal, and it's amethyst. Just so you know. Yes, exactly. She did go back. If you look at all my videos, my playlists, look at my playlist on YouTube. It's all Mary Magdalene and Yeshua. I go all the way back to polyamory. I started because of Aubrey Marcus. That was one of the things. But I wanted to go all the way back to what is going on to the divine, the perfect divine couple. Perfect meaning they are enraptured by each other. Perfect in that they're spiritually awake. Perfect is that they want to be of service to people, right? They want to be of service. They want to enlighten them. They want to help them heal and get out of the karmic loop, right? That's what I mean by, in other words, they want to be of service, which is what they wanted to do. And so if you want, just check out my whole playlist on Yeshua and Mary Magdalene, because you could say I'm obsessed. No, they're not your ancestors. I'm sorry. I really don't do that. You're in the wrong channel for this. I don't want to hear it. The Troubadours and the Knights Templars. The two groups with whom the Cathars are most often associated are the Troubadours and the Knights Templars, both who had a very strong presence in the Languedoc during the 13th century. Okay, my love, you're going to have to go. I'm not going to cater to your fucking bullshit. I'm sorry, at all. I don't play that. That's it. I do not play that. All right, so I'm sorry. If you have any questions on why I don't believe her, feel free to tell me. Ask me any question, I'll answer, but I'm not going to fucking do this. Do you know how many people... It's like every asshole was Cleopatra, and every fuckhead was Alexander the Great. I can't stand it. I can't. And To be that reincarnation, you are not a fucking match. In other words, and I've explained it. Actually, you know what? I've explained my other Mary Magdalene playlist. I won't repeat it. Just go check out my work there, my discussions, and you'll get my answers. But feel free to ask me if you're offended. Let me know, and I'll be happy to talk to you about it. Let's go back on track. Okay. The troubadours were itinerary poets writing in Occitan, who flourished between the 11th and 13th century. In Germany, their counterparts were known as the Min singers, and Wolfram von Eschenbahn was one of their number. The troubadours' main themes were chivalry and courtly love. That's where romantic love comes from. It comes from the troubadours. Romantic love, as you know it today, comes from that group, okay? Some poems were literally love songs, often addressed to a woman who was unattainable, while other troubadour poems and songs were actually allegories of spiritual development and betray an awareness of the divine feminine. Did you hear that? So during that time, right, the Cathars' influence of seeing women as equals, of seeing women as the high priestess, right? When the troubadours come in, right, with romantic love, putting a woman on a pedestal, talking about her purity, her intelligence, her grace, her beauty, right? It's the male, it's the masculine, right? In a platonic spiritual love, bending the knee to the high priestess. Okay? And they're writing poetry about women who are married. Quite often they're married to, and this was accepted. Men who were married to these women who had these troubadours like infatuated by them, the men weren't jealous. It was actually a flex. Oh my God, I've got a troubadour writing about my wife, about how beautiful, smart, graceful, this, that, and the other. Let me continue. Among the most celebrated troubadours were Peter Vidal, William Figueira, and Geoffrey Rodel. In the Languedoc, they enjoyed the protection of the same families who protected the Cathars. Did you hear that? At least one troubadour, William de Dufour, was known to be a Cathar. No doubt there were others. The concept of the divine feminine suggests another link between the two movements. The perfect, upon being consoled, were given the title of Theotokos, which is a Greek word, Theotokos, which means God-bearer, a turn of phrase that is more usually associated with the Virgin Mary. The Knights Templars were the most powerful military religious orders of their day and were major landowners in the Languedoc, while theories suggesting that the Cathar treasure, whether its nature was entrusted to the Templars, remain fanciful. There are a number of more definite links between the heretics and the soldier monks. Remember, the Knights Templars were warrior monks. One of the Templars' great Grand Masters, Bertrand de Belfort, came from a Cathar family. Holy shit, I didn't know this. And during the Albigensian Crusade, the Templars welcomed fugitive Cathars into their order. In some Templar preceptories in the Languedoc, Cathars are numbered Catholics. Furthermore, the Templars refused to participate in the Albigensian Crusade. There could have been a number of reasons for this. They had a great deal of support in the Languedoc, so any military intervention there would have been politically disastrous for the order. Over and above these reasons, one cannot help but wonder if certain elements within the order remain sympathetic to the Cathars. So though they destroyed whole villages of Cathars, some remained, as fugitives. This theory is rendered the most possible by the fact that the Templars were themselves viciously suppressed between 1307 and 1312 on charges of heresy, blasphemy, and sodomy. Of course, let's do that. It's funny how they would accuse these men of sodomy when you and I both know that's what many of these priests in the Catholic religions were doing. And we know this from the lawsuits. Hello. Accusations that had earlier been leveled against the Cathars. Boy, they never stop, do they? Heresy, blasphemy, and the big S. Wow, what bastards. The persecuting society. The Cathars emerged at a time of profound change in Europe. The historian R.I. Moore has argued that Western society formed its institutions through the persecutions of heretics and others in the 13th century. Furthermore, definitions of heresy played a large part in shaping the concept of witchcraft, which led to the persecution and execution of thousands of innocent people, predominantly women. Did you see that? We went from honoring women, where the Cathars saw women as equal gurus to the males, right? We went through that. Remember, we're looking at the end of the 1200s, right? 1280, whatever. Then we walk into the early 1300s. And damn near immediately, they're like accusing women who probably were raised by their mothers who were Cathars. Maybe children who had been smuggled out to be taken care of by other people who weren't overtly Cathars or kept it under wraps, right? Raised by these women, right? Raised by these families to protect them. But they remembered what they had been taught as followers of Cathars. And the followers of Cathars, this is my download, okay? Because I really feel that if you're listening to me, you're probably interested in this because it's a memory. And I know it's a memory for me. That's why it's very emotional for me, actually. And I'll explain further. There were thousands of Cathars. Thousands of thousands. So it's not like you telling me you're Mary Magdalene, okay? We're not, okay? But what I will say is that these supposed witches, right? Some of them were alchemists and understood the ancient teachings of Mary Magdalene that had gone down the line. Reportedly, she lived in a cave for like 30, 40 years. And she, and this ritual of, because, okay, let me back up. We know that Mary Magdalene, we know that she would have been a temple of a priestess at Isis temple like Mother Mary. There are a lot of books on the subject of the Immaculate Conception, and that is probably not so wild. It's called Parthenogenesis, which means Immaculate Conception. Other priestesses in the ancient Greek world and ancient temples would actually do this. They were virgins having children, or at least giving birth to a holy divine child. I'm not kidding. There's a scholar who writes about it called Marguerite Rigogliosini. She's a PhD. Not that that should matter, but for some people it does. So Mary of Magdalene is being taught in the Temple of Isis the healing arts. This is known. She goes to France and goes into a cave with, I hope, I'm going to say with Yeshua. And I'm going to say that maybe Yeshua did not live to an old age. Maybe he got another 10 years. Okay, maybe. I'm going to assume that. Maybe, I would love to hear he was an old man who saw his grandchildren. Why wouldn't I want that for him? But anyway. And so she had learned a lot from the healing arts from him, from what he had learned from his travels. You know, he traveled to, as you know, Egypt, India, and Tibet. And so she brings all this knowledge back. She teaches all these women and men. It goes down the line into what becomes the Cathars. They teach their women are equal to the men. They all know it. And suddenly, by 1300, they're fucking burning women. Women that are beautiful. Women that are in their Shakti energy. Women that are incredibly healing. Women that their third eye is fully open. Women that get remote view. Women that can hear your thoughts, telepathy. And men. And here comes the fucking burning of witches. So let me continue. So furthermore, definitions of heresy played a large part in shaping the concept of witchcraft, which led to the persecution and execution of thousands of innocent, predominantly women, during witch hunts of the 16th and 17th century. It is perhaps the Cathars' quest for an authentic spirituality that makes their story still relevant. The Cathars claim to be part of an authentic apostolic tradition dating back to the time of Christ cannot be proved. The Catholic Church claim to descend from Peter is also, however, historically unverifiable. Isn't that a bitch? Something that perhaps finds in the Cathar's favor is one of the Dead Sea Scrolls, made public for the first time in 1991. It has been alleged that the end of the Damascus document, the foundation of righteousness, an excommunication text, appears to show the excommunication of Paul from the Christian community. If this is indeed the case, then it would automatically invalidate the Catholic Church claim to be God's vicars on earth, since most of the major forms of organized Christianity are based on the teachings of Paul, not Christ. Did you hear that? Did you know that? It's such a betrayal that men of that village allowed these women to be burned. It wasn't just that village, it was, as you know. Wow, did you know that? They're actually imposters. The church obviously feels that publication of the text has not damaged its position, and in May 2000, Pope John Paul II issued an apology for the Crusades. Oh, well, isn't that nice? Many felt that the statement did not go far enough in offering reproachment to the Arab world, not to mention all that was made of the Albigen's crusade. It remains unlikely that the papacy will ever apologize for that. Islamophobia is really disgusting. It's disgusting. Because I said to you that I would read to you, and I have to, tomorrow's live will be on that. I'm going to read you why we know Plato existed. It's because of the Arab world. It's because of the Muslim and Arab, and not all Arabs are Muslim. It's a fucking religion. Muslims are Norwegian. Muslims were Vikings. I'm not joking when I say that, quite literally. Muslims are not a race. It's a religion. Similarly to Judaism is not a race. It's a religion. Similarly to Buddhism, it's not a race. It's a religion. I think people need to understand this. I think we're forgetting, which is strange to me, but okay. But in that ancient world of the antiquities of the Arabs, we should be fucking bending the knees and kissing the floor, going, if it wasn't for you people, we would know about Plato, Socrates, we wouldn't know about mathematics, we wouldn't know about any of this shit. We'd be fucking coming out of the dark ages today. And again, I'm not a Muslim, nor have I read the Quran. I've read here and there. It's nice. But I haven't read it to the level that I've read Buddhism or Hinduism. Does that make sense? And the only reason why I've read this, these books, is because I don't know what, I think many of us are born to remember. He died as a lamb, he'll come back as a lion. We are the lions. I've been saying that since 2023. We are the fractal lines. We are the ones coming back going, yeah, I don't think so. You're not getting away with this shit once again. Let me continue. It may be that the real Cathar treasure is to be found in their stress on simplicity, equality, nonviolence, work, and love. Okay, I'm going to have to read it again because, wow. It may be that the real Cathar treasure is to be found in their stress on simplicity, equality, non-violent work and love. By not building churches, they somehow brought divinity into the domestic sphere. For the Cathars, spirituality was not an aspect of religious observance. It was something to be lived through every moment and every day. These fucking churches, these cathedrals, this gold, wearing weaved silk and gold shoes and red hats and red shoes, and all of these are wearing all black and wearing all these little outfits that these people wear to show us, oh, I'm holy. Really? Really? Are you really holy because you're wearing the right outfit? Does that make sense? The Cathars wore whatever they had on their bodies. Whatever was given to them. Kind of like Buddha. Whatever. Loincloth one day. Oh, God, it's cold. Fuck. Oh, here's a donation of a beautiful weaved woolen, stole. Let me wrap myself around that. Oh, my Lord. These fucking people, man. I can't even fucking believe it sometimes. I really, honestly, the audacity. Right now, if you saw what I'm seeing, you'd understand why I'm saying all this. Right there is an aerial view of the Pope wearing all white, and whatever he's wearing, it's fucking expensive. You know that. You probably don't have an outfit that costs as much as what he's wearing. And there's all these men and all these cardinals and all these businessmen. It's just wrong. But that was the end of the book on that one. And again, the Cathars, their history and myth revealed by Sean Martin. I highly recommend it, obviously. I've got Holy Blood, Holy Grail, but let me go and step into Mary Magdalene. And the one that I have, it's called The Gospel of Mary. I have it on one of my, to sell on my TikTok channel. If you want to support the channel, awesome. If not, buy it. It's called The Gospel of Mary Magdalene by Jean-Yves Leloup, who's French. And the reason I'm really into him is because the French have an interesting idea about excavation, ancient history, antiquities, and they are very succinct and precise about translations. That is actually why. In the book, you'll see stuff in Greek on the left-hand page, and on the right-hand page is the translation, in this case, in English. And it's part 1, and I will read it. Just, there's some fragments missing. The story goes, I also have a copy of the, but I'm going to read this to you in a minute. The Lost Words of Jesus, the Discovery and Text of the Gospel of Thomas by John Dart and Ray Rayberg. Why am I reading all this? I really don't know. I'm fucking obsessed. And I'm not obsessed to join any church, any fraternity, any of that shit. I don't want you to kiss my ring. I don't want to bend the knee. I just want to know the truth. And really what I'm trying to excavate is the divine couple. And because I'm realizing that part of the reason why many of us are having gender wars, bullshit, class wars, racial wars, this and that, is because of the beginnings of the Western culture. Something happened. We went from Plato and Socrates and Aristotle and these guys and Aspasia, who was a great philosopher. The story goes that Aspasia trained Socrates, if I'm correct. I think I got the right philosopher. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I know for a fact that she trained one of the great philosophers, Aspasia. Okay? So where did we go wrong here? Where were we damaged? So, because let's remember, have we forgotten that before Christianity, the Christian church as we know it, right, Orthodoxy, 3,000 years, 2,500 years before, women were queens, women were educated, women were, and there would be pockets of time in Greece where women were thought of as cattle, and then suddenly there'd be a golden age where women were revered and loved, and men actually wanted to make love to women. It's a weird thing. I mean, I've studied the Greek shit, and it's kind of weird. But they go up and down in loving women, not loving women, seeing women as equals, not seeing women as equals, and it goes back and forth. But when it became a cemented fact that we were shit as the feminine sex was definitely when the orthodoxy kicked in. And the Cathars were not playing that shit. They were not playing that game. And part of the danger, in my opinion, for the Catholic Church was they had a whole system of oppression of the feminine sex, which including the eradication of Mary Magdalene. And the Cathars weren't playing that. They totally rejected that. I want to know too, twin souls, exactly. So page 1 through 6 are missing because it was burnt. Many of these, they were burnt by the shepherd's mother who thought, well, we need fire. I need to make food and I'll just burn some of the shit because I need to kindle the fire. I'm not joking. That's the story. Okay? So let me read it. What is matter? Will it last forever? The teacher answered, all that is born, all that is created, all the elements of nature are interwoven and united with each other. All that is composed shall be decomposed. Everything returns to its roots. Matter returns to the origin of matter. Those who have ears, let them hear. Peter said to him, since you have become the interpreter of the elements and the events of the world, tell us, what is the sin of the world? The teacher answered, there is no sin. It is you who make sin exist when you act according to the habits of your corrupted nature. This is where sin lies. This is why the good has come into your midst. It acts together with the elements of your nature so as to reunite it with its roots. Then he continued, this is why you become sick and why you die. It is a result of your actions. What you do takes you further away. Those who have ears, let them hear. Attachment to matter gives rise to passion against nature. Thus trouble arises in the whole body. This is why I tell you, be in harmony. If you are out of balance, take inspiration from manifestations of your true nature. Those who have ears, let them hear. After saying this, the Blessed One greeted them all, saying, Peace be with you. May my peace arise and be fulfilled within you. Be vigilant and allow no one to mislead you by saying, Here it is, or there it is, for it is within you that the Son of Man dwells. Go to him. For those who seek him, find him. Walk forth and announce the gospel of the kingdom. Impose no law other than that which I have witnessed. Do not add more laws to those given in the Torah, lest you become bound by them. Having said all this, he departed. The disciples were in sorrow, shedding many tears and saying, How are we to go among the unbelievers and announce the gospel of the kingdom of the Son of Man? They did not spare his life, so why should they spare ours? Then Mary arose, embraced them all, and began to speak to her brothers. Do not remain in sorrow and doubt, for his grace will guide you and comfort you. Instead, let us praise his greatness, for he has prepared us for this. He is calling us to become fully human. Then thus Mary turned their hearts towards the good, and they began to discuss the meaning of the teacher's words. Peter said to Mary, Sister, we know that the teacher loved you, differently from other women. Tell us whatever you remember of any words he told you, which we have not yet heard. Mary said to them, I will now speak to you of that which has not been given to you to hear. I had a vision of the teacher, and I said to him, Lord, I see you now in this vision. And he answered, You are blessed, for the sight of me does not disturb you. There where is the nows lies the treasure. Then I said to him, Lord, when someone meets you in a moment of vision, is it through the soul, psyche, that they see, or is it through the spirit? The teacher answered, It is neither through the soul nor the spirit, but the now, it's N-O-U-S, between the two, which I see the vision, and it is within. Interesting. Hang on. And craving said, I did not see you descend, but now I see you rising. Why do you lie, since you belong to me? The soul answered, I saw you, though you did not see me, nor recognize me. I was with you as with a garment, and you never felt me. Having said this, the soul left, rejoicing greatly. Then it entered into the third climate, known as ignorance. Ignorance inquired of the soul, Where are you going? You are dominated by wicked inclinations. Indeed, you lack discrimination, and you are enslaved. The soul answered, Why do you judge me, since I have made no judgment? I have been dominated, but I myself have not dominated. I have not been recognized, but I myself have recognized that all things which are composed shall be decomposed on earth and in heaven. Freed from this third climate, the soul continued in ascent and found itself in the fourth climate. This has 7 manifestations. The first manifestation is darkness, the second craving, the third ignorance, the fourth lethal jealousy, the fifth enslavement to the body, the sixth intoxicating wisdom, the seventh guileful wisdom. There are 7 manifestations of wrath, and they oppress the soul with questions. Where do you come from, murderer? Where are you going, vagabond? The soul answered, That which oppressed me has been slain, that which encircled me has vanished, my cravings have faded, and I am freed from my ignorance. The 7 levels. The 7 levels. It's interesting because in the Vedas, in the Bhagavad Gita, they talk about slothfulness, jealousy, greed, ignorance, intoxication, things of that nature to control the senses. Meaning, well, I mean, look at the addictions that we have on the planet. What is the book? The Cathar. The book. It's called The Cathars: Their History and Myths Revealed by Sean Martin. Sorry, I didn't look down. Hopefully, I got to you before you left. Listen to this. I left the world with the aid of another world. A design was erased by virtue of a higher design. Henceforth I traveled repose, where time rests in the eternity of time. I go now into silence. Having said all this, Mary became silent. For it was silence that the teacher spoke to her. Then Andrew began to speak and said to his brothers, Tell me, what do you think of these things she has been telling us? As for me, I do not believe that the teacher would speak like this. These ideas are too different from those he has known. And Peter added, How is it possible that the teacher talked in this manner with a woman about secrets from which we ourselves are ignorant? Must we change our customs and listen to this woman? Did he really choose her and prefer her to us? Jealousy is unhinged. Then Mary wept and answered him, My brother Peter, what can you be thinking? Do you believe that this is just my own imagination, that I invented this vision? Or do you believe that I would lie about our teacher? At this, Levi spoke up, Peter, you have always been hot-tempered, and now we see repudiating a woman, just as our adversaries do. Yet if the teacher held her worthy, what are you to reject her? Surely the teacher knew her very well, for he loved her more than us. Therefore let us atone and become fully human, so that the teacher can take root in us. Let us grow as he demanded of us, and walk forward to spread the gospel without trying to lay down any rules and laws other than those he witnessed. Wow. When Levi had said these words, they all went forth to spread the gospel according to Mary. That's how it ends. And this is in page 39. And there's all kinds of, it's an incredible book. And there's more, where he lays it out and then describes it. He's got drawings of circles, like he talks about anthropos. And then, so what he's talking about is humans. It goes out in a kind of a circle, a semicircle. So in one semicircle, it goes human, angel, seraphim, and light. And on the opposite end of the human, it says animal, plant, and matter. Okay, and then he goes into, when you look at his diagrams, he's going celestial human, creative world, terrestrial human. Do you understand? Like this part with anthropos at the center recalls the structure of the brain into two hemispheres, into their opposites or complementary functions. The corpus callosum, which unites the two halves of the brain, is thus analogous to humanus, in both fragility and its greatness. The full potential for union of these opposites, Eastern and Western, intuitive and logical, diurnal and nocturnal, is rarely realized either on the cosmological or the neurological level. Let us know that we are the bridge between animal and angel, primarily through the faculty of language, whether in thought or imagination, whether expressed or unexpressed. The link here is the word or the expression of desire beyond mere need and demand. Human beings become the bridge between plant and archangel in the heart through the slow gesture movement that is both supple and permeated with awareness. We are the bridge between I am and I am not, between the fertile void and the sterile void, through the experience that is both foreseen and unforeseeable, such as the sudden appearance of a rainbow in a storm at noon. The sterile void, which is stagnant absurdity, is what Nikolai Berdia called the bad nothingness. To become a bridge between it and the fertile void, the uncreated origin of all beings, is to embrace and live in one instant both the absurdity and the grace of the human condition. To be or not to be is not at all the question, for it is revealed as an expression of torment and even stupidity. To be and not to be, that is the question. This restores us to harmony both with ancient esoteric teachings and the implications of quantum physics. That's why I prefer this version of the Gospel of Mary by Jean-Yves Loulou, because he's philosophizing. He's actually educating us on the higher levels of consciousness, realities, and the understanding of what shuts us down from experiencing the freedom that thinking in infinite terms allow us, right? Meanwhile, the Gospel of Mary tells us to go to him, Mary 8:21, to verify each of his teachings for ourselves. Did you hear that? For ourselves, to become what he is, so as to discover what we eternally are. The next verse says that they who seek him find him. For the Savior is this desire that makes us seek him, the dotted line that is ours to fill in. Do you understand? If fucking preachers were sitting here on their pulpit reading Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and the Gospel of Mary, and the Gospel of Thomas, and the Cathars, that we would all be at church right now? We would all fucking line up. We'd be like, I'm in. Fuck yeah, that's a show I want. Because I want to understand this. Hey, Hare Krishna. So does that make sense? Does that make sense to you? Like, why are these people... it's like wash and repeat for hundreds of years. Watch and repeat, wash and repeat, wash and repeat. And you've got the Schofield Bible. By the way, if you're a Schofield dispositionalist, however you say it, dispositionalist, then you should be waiting for the rapture on the 23rd of September. I'm not being funny either. I'm not laughing. I don't think it's funny. Not today, I don't think it's funny. Thank goodness I'm not a church person anymore. But I'm just saying, look at this. I'm reading. And to be honest with you, the Cathars were doing what we're doing today, you and I, together. They were doing this. They were reading stuff. They were discussing it. They were refining it. They had the perfects. They had the believers. In other words, they had a level of, I understand you don't want to hear this. I know you got your babies to raise. You got the crops to harvest. I get it. Like, they weren't judging people for where they were at. But they did want people, it sounds to me like they did want people to self-realize. And so they would have these discussions, again, remember, in people's homes, in barns, and in the fields. That's where we're at. And here we are, right? I'm going to say it. Here we are, 1,300 years later, still doing it. Here we are. But now we're using a phone to communicate on an app. Isn't that wild? Because ultimately we want to know the truth. So I'm going to read to you from, again, it's called Unearthing the Lost Words of Jesus by John Dart and Ray Riegert. It's an incredible book. It talks about how the Nag Hammadi was found. I'm going to go right, the Gospel of Thomas. I'm just going to go right to it. Now listen to this. This is going to blow your mind. They were closest to the truth, probably from Mary. Exactly, they were closest to the truth. Of the many Gospels and other writings that Muhammad Ali, that was his name, I swear to God, Muhammad Ali unearthed near Nag Hammadi in 1945, the most remarkable was a collection of Jesus' sayings. It was a common practice in antiquity to gather together the wise remarks and spiritual utterances of a teacher. The books of Proverbs and Ecclesiastics in the Old Testament are part of this long tradition of wisdom literature. So it is not surprising that followers of Yeshua combined over 100 of his teachings into a book they called the Gospel of Thomas. Historians have actually determined that Matthew and Luke used similar documents when they wrote their Gospels. Beginning in the 19th century, they developed a theory that this saying source must have existed since the authors of Matthew and Luke, who never met, used identical quotes of Yeshua. This mysterious source became known as the Lost Gospels of Q. Until the discovery of Thomas, nothing similar had ever been located. The find lent strong support to the Q theory, particularly when scholars realized that over 1/3 of the sayings in Thomas are similar to those probably contained in the Gospel of Q. Many mysteries surround both books. A central question of the Gospel of Thomas relates to the identity of the author. Though the book is attributed to the doubting Thomas of the New Testament, the real writer will probably never be known. Claiming a gospel was written by one of the disciples was a frequent technique used by early Christians to enhance the book's standing among other followers. Most biblical scholars in the United States believe Thomas represents one of the many independent schools of Christianity that developed early in the history of the religion. Some date the original Greek version from which the Nag Hammadi Coptic document was translated as early as the second half of the 1st century, a few decades after the crucifixions. Such an early date could mean it was written before the New Testament gospel and is therefore closer to the source and more historically accurate. When the Jesus Seminar, an international group of biblical authorities, debated the reliability of various historical sources, they determined that the 9 New Testaments parables thought to be stories actually told by Yeshua. The Thomas version was closest to the original in 6 cases. Let me look at this. Let me read some of the... I'm going to go right to the quotes. Let me go right to the first quote. So they're saying, right, that these unearthed quotes that they found at different events, different timelines, are absolutely crazy that they're mirroring each other. But these are more likely more accurate. All right. Whoever finds the interpretation of these sayings will not taste death. Let whoever seeks not cease from this seeking until he finds. When he finds, he will be troubled. When he is troubled, he will marvel and will reign over all. Oh my God. Okay, close your eyes. I need you to really hear this. Listen to what he's saying. Let whoever seeks not cease from his seeking until he finds. When he finds, he will be troubled. That's what's happening to people during the ascension. They're seeking, they're finding, they're troubled, they're scared, they're confused. When he is troubled, he will marvel, right? And he will reign over all. It means you have mastered yourself. If those who lead you say, look, the kingdom is in heaven, then the birds of heaven will precede you. If they say it is in the sea, then the fish will precede you. Rather, the kingdom is within you and outside of you. When you know yourselves, you will be known, and you will know you are children of the living Father. But if you do not know yourselves, you will live in poverty, and you yourselves are the poverty. That's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing to me but what is he saying? He's saying, if you don't figure who you are, you will never be at peace. You will never be fulfilled. You will be poor. You will live in a state of lack. You will be afraid. Lack consciousness is being afraid. Lack consciousness is being greedy. It's lack consciousness, right? But if you know yourself, if you understand these aspects of yourself, and you go into your shadows, you're going to know this, and you will be rich. Look at the notes here. It says, what I just read, these words of wisdom are similar to the advice of Eastern sages that say, be here now. The person advanced in days will not hesitate to ask an infant of 7 days about the place of life, and that person will live. For many who are first will be last, and they will become a single one. The theme of becoming one is common in ancient literature, often referring to finding one's center, and sometimes to sexual intercourse. Let's continue. Recognize what is in front of your face, and what is concealed will be revealed to you. For there is nothing hidden that will not be disclosed. That's wild. His disciple asked him, do you want us to fast? How shall we pray? Shall we give alms? What diet shall we keep? And Yeshua said, do not lie, and do not do what you hate, because of all things are revealed in the sight of heaven. For nothing is hidden that will not be revealed, and nothing is covered that will remain covered. Saying, 14, closely parable. Okay, so basically he's saying, don't do shit to look good. In other words, shall we fast? How shall we pray? Should we give alms? What shall we do? What's the diet? What should we eat? And he's saying, don't be hypocrites. Don't do things I tell you. Do things that you feel. Right? That's basically what he's saying. Blessed is the lion that the man shall eat, so that the lion will become human. Cursed is the man whom the lion shall eat, and the lion will become human. Some scholars believe this saying is based on Plato, who said the soul was part human and part lion. It was the duty of the human part to tame the beast inside. It's interesting because in the tarot card, you've got, it's connected by number 8. It's one of the major arcanas. There is a lion. Typically, it's a lion with a maiden. Okay, it's called the strength card. And people call it, they say it's about exhaustion. No, it's not about exhaustion. It's between the fight between the ego, which is the lion, and the soul. It's mastering of the self. The ego is the lion, the beast, right? And the soul is the self. So that's interesting. He's saying master yourself. Humankind is like a wise fisherman who casts his net into the sea. He drew it out of the sea full of small fish. The wise fisherman found among them a large good fish. He threw all the small fish back in the sea and chose the large fish without hesitation. Whoever has ears to hear, let him hear. The passage is similar to Matthew 13:47, in which the kingdom of heaven is compared to the net, and the fish are likened to souls that are saved. You know what he's saying? This is my interpretation. I could be completely wrong. But what I'm feeling is he's saying, don't waste your time on people who don't want to know. Go for the big fish. In other words, go for someone who's begging for knowledge. Go for someone who really wants to know about their spiritual ascension, about their healing, about this. Don't waste your time on little fish picking little bones out of your mouth. Meaning, you're going to be fucking exhausted trying to convince the little fish. Go for the fish that walks in and says, teach me. Teach me. It's kind of like somebody going to, how would I put it? In martial arts, you find your master. In doing medicine, plant medicine, you find your shaman. In healing your ascension journey, you find your mentor. You know what I'm saying? Your teacher, your guru. And sometimes you're not supposed to find any of those things. You're actually supposed to walk the path with other people who are figuring out just like you are. And the enlightenment comes from the aha moments you're having, they're having. So it's saying, like, pick your battles. That's also what it's saying. The sower went out, filled his hand, and sowed. Some seeds fell on the road. Birds came and gathered them up. Others fell on the rock, and did not take the root in the earth, and did not produce. Others fell among thorns. The thorns choked the seeds, and worms ate them. But others fell on good ground, and brought forth good fruit. These yielded 60 per measure, and 120 measures. Let me think about this. Filled his hands, sowed some seeds, fell on the road. Birds came and gathered them up. Others fell on the rock and did not take root. Oh, yes. Okay. It's kind of like Johnny Apple seeds. It's kind of like, Johnny Apple. I don't know if it's true, actually. I don't even know if it's a true story, but it's a great American story where there was a guy called Johnny Appleseed, and like throwing seeds all over the way. I mean, he walked through the whole length of this country, I guess. And through seeds. And so that's why we have crab apples and apple trees all over the place here and there. And so it's kind of like that. It's like throw the seeds and throw nectar, throw knowledge, throw wisdom, and realize that some will grow, some will be stolen. It will never take root. So some will be on a rock, some people, the birds will take it and eat it, but some will take root. So it's about wisdom and imparting wisdom, and some people are ready for it and some people are not. I have cast fire on the world, and look, I am guarding it until it blazes. I have cast fire on the world, and look, I am guarding it until it blazes. The fire may refer to Jesus' teaching. I think, honestly, in my opinion, I have cast fire on the world, and look, I am guarding it until it blazes. It's enlightenment. It's your own enlightenment, the flame within you, being ignited by somebody else. And you've been, when you were with your twin, or when you did... throughout your journey in this incarnation, you've met people that literally change your life with a sentence, with a glance, with the way they listened to your story and then gave you wisdom to what you had gone through. You have looked at some of the things that betrayed you, and a year or two or 10 years later, you look back on that betrayal with gratitude. Like, I really would not be the person I am today. Or a death. Literally somebody dying that you loved. And you realize that you would have never transformed the way you are without that person. In other words, their death was a gift. It was time for them to go. But most importantly, your takeaway was, my God, I learned so much. I learned how to be a better person. I learned to hold sacred space. Or I learned that in one moment you're alive and the next it's gone. And I've been much more, maybe you learned that you need to be much more about living in the now, from the loss. Okay? Listen to this. This is one of the books I recommend that you read because it's such an easy read and it's the most beautiful thing ever written. He was Lebanese, he was Christian. Okay? His name is Khalil Gibran. You should read The Prophet. This book I used to give to everyone that had a newborn child. That was my gift to them, The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. So I'm going to read this to you because I think it's beautiful. This heaven will pass away, and that which is above will pass away. The dead are not alive, and the living will not die. In the days when you ate what is dead, you made it alive. When you come into the light, what will you do? On the day when you were one, you became two. But when you have become two, what shall you do? The saying, do you know what that means? It's in my opinion, it doesn't mean I'm correct, but I'm going to tell you what I think it means. It means when you become two, it means when you're finally aligned with the part of you that witnesses you. So the I and the me, right? Which Eckhart Tolle first talked about in The Power of Now. It's the I and the me. It's self-realization of integrating the two parts of you. And that's why when you're in a twin flame journey, it's not just about, oh my God, I need this person. It's about, I am enough into myself. It's coming to that knowledge. I am enough into myself, and that belief system. I am enough. I am my twin flame. I am these two suffering people, two souls. A soul split in two in two different bodies. But I become the flame. Okay, I become this light within myself, and I merge into being enough into myself, and I feel it with every breath of my being. So it says here what it means. This saying promises a third heaven as the ultimate goal to be reached after this heaven, and that which is above disappears. The quote is also interesting because it sounds very similar to the passage in Mark and Matthew, in which Yeshua explains that heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. What do you think about that? Heaven and earth, the limitations of that will pass away. Well, why is it limited? Because they're much more than just heaven and earth. There's like other universes, other planets, other realities, other dimensions, other knowledges, right? And it's an expansion of your understanding. And why does it pass away? Because we are in 3D, and we can only absorb and digest what we can. And when we stop being so fucking stubborn and believing that all we are and all we'll ever be is in this incarnation. Once we expand to ask, what was I before this? What could I be after this? Why do I love this person? Why do I connect with this person and no one else on the planet? Why do I have these connections with people and I know I've known them before in an instant of recognition? Why is that? And once we expand that understanding of what is real and what is never going to be permanent, because it's an evolving consciousness of great expansion, then what we thought was just duality of heaven and earth, it's gone. What becomes is a new earth, a new way of self-realization, and of realizing that there are other realms of existences. Okay? And we've been there before. Okay, we've been there before. And I think he knew that. I mean, why would I not know that? The disciples said to Jesus, "We know you will go away from us. Will you be our leader?" And Yeshua said, wherever you are, wherever you go to James, the just. Heaven and earth came into being for him. James was the brother of Yeshua and head of the Jerusalem church. He became a major figure in the development of Christianity during the decades immediately following the crucifixion. Now, okay, I'll just continue. Yeshua said to his disciples, "Compare me to someone and tell me who I am like." Simon Peter said to him, "You are like a righteous angel." Matthew said to him, "You are like a wise philosopher." Thomas said to him, "Master, my mouth is incapable of saying whom you are like." Yeshua said, "I am not your master, because you drank. You are drunk from the bubbling spring that I measured out." And he took Thomas and drew him aside and spoke 3 words to him. When Thomas returned to his companions, they asked him, "What did Jesus say to you?" Thomas said to them, If I tell you one of the words he spoke to me, you will pick up stones and throw them at me, and fire will come from the stones and burn you up." Thomas is presented as the disciple most in awe of Yeshua and the one favored with the secret knowledge. Now, what would he say that? Jealousy. In this actual thing that we're, quote that we're reading together, jealousy is being expressed. So no, apparently they would have been jealous of Thomas. They were jealous of Mary Magdalene. They were just a jealous little fucking band of men. Yeshua said to them, if you fast, you will bring sin upon yourselves. And if you pray, you will condemn yourselves. And if you give alms, you will do evil to your spirit. When you enter any land and walk through its regions, if they receive you, eat whatever they set before you. Do you know who that sounds like? That sounds like Buddha. Buddha would eat whatever was set in front of him with his begging bowl. Heal the sick among them, for that which enters your mouth will not defile you, but that which comes out of your mouth will defile you. When you see one who was not born of woman, fall on your faces and worship him. That is your father. Wow. Similar to saying this passage promises a heavenly vision, in this case being not born of a woman. By the way, there's a story. This is very interesting, but it is after Christianity was established. This is like what you would call a pagan story, which I love. It's the story of Merlin, who has no father. He was born of a woman with no father. And it's in the story, if you look at my playlist hang on. It's about chakras. I talk about chakras. I'm not going to tell that story now because it's too long. But that was one of the myths, that Merlin had no mother. Which, again, I've mentioned, was something the high priestesses in the ancient Greek world, Egyptian, could do. The disciples said to Jesus, tell us how our end will come. And Yeshua said, have you discovered the beginning, that your search for the end? In the place where the beginning is, there the end will be. Blessed is he who will stand at the beginning. He will know the end, and will not taste death. And will not taste death. Have you discovered the beginning, that you search for the end? In the place where the beginning, there the end will be. Blessed he who stands at the beginning. He will know the end. Yeah, okay. This is remembering who you are from the beginning. That's my opinion again. And it's remembering who you are. Your essence of when you were made as a electrical spark of energy, right? And how you were first birthed from the breath of the one of 1,000 names, the one who created us all. You call it God, universe, okay? That consciousness of divine unconditional love. Once you know your beginning, there is no end. And you will not taste death. Because you will remember there is no death. You just incarnate here. It's like, is there a death? If I go right now to the kitchen, have I just died? No, I haven't. I've moved to the kitchen. If I go downstairs into my car and travel across country, have I died? No, I've moved my body to... In other words, the soul travels and it never dies. So once you know the very beginnings of the beginnings, you know that there is no death. You will not taste death. That's actually what I'm seeing. At least that's what it means to me. Listen to this one. This blessed is he who existed before he was created. If you become my disciple and hear my words, these stones shall serve you. For there are 5 trees in paradise that do not change in summer or winter, and whose leaves do not fall off. Whoever knows them shall not taste death. Do you see how he keeps saying? He keeps talking the trees. So I forgot how many trees there were, but there's the tree of knowledge, tree of life, and 3 other trees that I'm missing. Unlike the familiar quote that surrounds it, this saying is Gnostic in origin. Gnostic. Okay, good. Blessed he who existed before he was created. Oh, he means before you incarnated in this. Okay, he's talking about incarnation in this particular body. Got it. If you become my disciple and hear my words, these stones shall serve you. These stones shall... For there are 5 trees in paradise that do not change in summer or winter, and whose leaves do not fall. It's interesting because, again, I'm going totally off script. Okay, there's no script here. I'm just reading and trying to... You know, well, many of you do, what you've seen in your beautiful meditations, right? You've seen realms. Sometimes they're foggy, but you see them. Interestingly enough, if you go very deep into your meditation, or if you have gone into sound frequency healing, like sound baths, if the sound bath person is really good, they will evoke out of your chakras an altered state of consciousness where you see. So in some meditations, you might see images that flit across your inner scope, your inner vision. And yet sometimes when you go into either deeper meditations or sound frequency for some weird reason, suddenly you see clearly. And you're able to see various types of dimensions and realities. In other words, you're actually traveling into other realms. And that's when there is no, there's no death. That's what he says, paradise. There are 5 trees in paradise that do not change in summer or winter, whose leaves do not fall. Whoever knows them shall not taste death. Yeah, it's because at that point you're no longer in the physical body. But what's interesting is that you've actually had those experiences in your meditations or however, and I'm not talking about medicines right now, okay? I'm talking about pure you, just you, and maybe you're connecting with your guides, right? You've saged. You've gone into deep meditations, or you've gone, I find for me it's sound healing, but it could be something for you differently. But now suddenly you're fucking traveling in other realms and you're beyond. And it reminds you of how immortal your soul, how indestructible and immortal your soul is. And yes, at that point you will not taste death. You will not be afraid of death because you know that there's nothing to be fearful of. You've been in those realms before. You'll be there again. There is no decay because you're not in the material world. It's right. That's basically what he's saying. Listen to this. The disciples said to Jesus, "Tell us, what is the kingdom of heaven?" Again, this is from the Gospel of Thomas, okay? And lost words of Jesus. He said to them, "It is like a grain of mustard seeds, smaller than all seeds, but when it falls on cultivated ground, it puts forth a large branch and provides a shelter for the birds of heaven." For centuries, Jewish prophets compared the kingdom of heaven to the famed cedars of Lebanon, which were used to build the Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem. So Yeshua is shocking is shocking his audience by likening the kingdom of heaven to a tiny mustard seed, which grows into a scraggy plant most farmers consider a weed. Do you know why he says that? In my opinion, again, it is like a grain of mustard seed, smaller than all seeds, but when it falls on cultivated ground, it puts forth a large branch and provides a shelter for the birds of heaven. It's because the consciousness of heaven, the way it's sold, right? It's sold. It's been packaged and sold to the populace for centuries. What he's saying is the path of ascension is a simple road. It's such a humble road. It's humble. Look, the mustard seed is smaller than all seed. It is a humble road. But yet it grows into a magnificent tree that shelters the birds of heaven. So it's like going outside of these trappings, of these ceremonies, of these rituals, of this concept of I'm so rich, I have $1 billion. Yeah, but your soul is dead. And it's that concept of humility. Wow. Mary said to Jesus, "What are your disciples like?" He said, "They are like little children dwelling in a field that is not theirs. When the owners of the field come, they will say, 'Let us have our field back.' The disciples strip naked in front of the owners and give the field back to them. Therefore, I say, if the owner of a house knows a thief is coming, he will stay awake and will not let the thief break into the house and carry away his goods. You must keep watch against the world. Arm yourselves with great power, lest the robbers find a way to come upon you, because the difficulty you expect will materialize. Let there be a man of understanding among you." After the crop ripened, the owner came quickly with a sickle in his hand and reaped it. Whoever has ears to hear, let him hear. Did you hear what he said about? He's basically talking about if you're fucking paranoid, if you're greedy, in other words, you must keep watch against the world. Arm yourselves with great power, lest the robbers find a way to come upon you, because the difficulty you expect will materialize. He just said, what you fear most will happen. And he's talking about their children. They're disobedient. They're rebellious. They really think they have it in control. They don't. What you think will be your problem will materialize. It's interesting. It's interesting. So this again is from, again, if I was a Christian, I'm just saying, if I really was a Christian, if I truly was going, I'd be buying these books and reading this. I'd be reading this all day long. I'd be reading, taking notes, studying, things of that nature. I would be just reading. We're going to go right into holy, we're having a good time, right? I'm almost, oh shit, no. What are they doing? Okay. So Holy Blood, Holy Grail is why the Da Vinci Code came out, just so you know. He read it. What's his name? Dan Brown read the book, apparently, reportedly, and then ended up, writing an exciting fiction. So I'm going to read, I've just opened the pages and I trust that. I think of books as oracles. That's why I kind of skip. I read very non-linearly sometimes, even personally, just so you know. This is how I read. I open the book and I read. Now, again, I've been telling you to go ahead and watch the movie The Kingdom of Heaven. The director's cut is what you want to watch, so you can understand some shit. Have to sleep. This is great. Thank you. I'm gonna go in a minute because my phone is going kapooty. Have a good night, love. I'm gonna go here. I'm just gonna go here because so we're talking about the Crusades. We talked about the Cathars. The crusade against the Saracens, moreover, careful examination of contemporary accounts revealed that the Templars provided a haven for many Cathar refugees. On occasion, they do seem to have taken up arms on their refugee behalf, and an expectation of the order rolls towards the beginning of the Albigensian Crusade reveals a major influx of Cathars into the temple ranks. So the Knights Templars were made of Cathars. If you go back on my YouTube channel, you see this whole live. Just remember that's the picture. It'll be under my playlist, Mary Magdalene. I might actually do a new playlist called, I might call it the Cathars. I don't know. I think it's easier. We'll see. You guys let me know. But it looks like that we had a light of Knights Templars who, the way they survived, the Cathars, the way they survived is they moved into the Templars' protection. And probably, I'm getting a download of children went in who were orphaned. Young teenage boys were orphaned by the slaughter of the Cathars, and they were absorbed by the Knights Templars. And then we know what happened after that. I'm actually going to call it a night as well because it's actually almost 2 o'clock in the fucking morning. And I just realized that. But I want to thank you for being here. Yes, please look for this replay. It'll be up as soon as I can. As soon as it downloads, because it's been 2 hours. It's going to take a while to download, but I'll upload it on YouTube. Follow me on YouTube, Sacred Intimacy Tarot. Follow me on Patreon. There's stuff that I give, and there's a free section for Patreon. Follow me there. It's all on my link tree. And thank you, Sandy. You've really held on. Red Mama Yeti, you've held on. You guys have been like... Anyway, thank you. And then you've got, the books, again, Mary Magdalene, The Gospel of Mary Magdalene by Jean-Yves Leloup. The book, Unearthing the Lost Words of Jesus, The Discovery and Text of the Gospel of Thomas by John Dart and Ray Gaybard. The Cathars, Their History and Myths Revealed by Sean Martin. And those are the 3 books. And The Holy Blood, Holy Grail by Michael Bagan, Richard Lay, and Henry Lincoln. You'll find it. Get the illustrated version. It's a special edition of the illustrated version. All right, so I'll have that up. Follow me on YouTube, follow me on TikTok, and follow me on Patreon. Sending you much love on your journey. Namaste. Be well.